Turkey issues arrest warrants for building developers as the earthquake death toll rises to 34,000.
Good morning. It's 6 o'clock on Monday, the 13th of February. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Sarah Khan.
And leading our news this morning, Turkish police have issued 113 arrest warrants relating to buildings that collapsed during the devastating earthquake a week ago today. It comes as a Foreign Office minister warns the death toll could reach 50,000.
The Prime Minister's bill to cut EU red tape is in jeopardy as he faces rebellion over his plan to scrap clean water regulations. The government's retained EU law bill would ditch protections for swimmers and wildlife.
The Labour Party has claimed that BBC Chair Richard Sharp's position is increasingly untenable. It comes after a committee of MPs found that he had made significant errors of judgment in relation to an £800,000 loan to the then Prime Minister Boris Johnson.
And in the past few hours, the Super Bowl has wrapped up in the United States. Showbiz reporter Kinsey Schofield was there and will be bringing us all the details of Rihanna's blockbuster halftime show.
And presenter Sarah Khan is here today, a new pairing. And for the next couple of days, Isabel's on half-term. And lovely to see you, Sarah.
It's nice to be with you, my mate. Here we go.
Yeah, in case people think we've never done this before.
We've done it before.
We've done it before. We've done it on radio. And but anyway, Sarah is very, very good, very knowledgeable, very opinionated.
Oh, goodness me.
And very interested to talk to you, because if you get in touch with us and ask views, Sarah will certainly give them. GBviews at gbnews.uk or on Twitter, whatever the address is on Twitter. What is it? At GBnews on Twitter as well.
Here we go.
So lovely to have you on board.
Thank you very much for having me.
Fasten your seatbelt. We're here until 9:30.
It's 1 week since the Turkey-Syria earthquake, and while the current death toll has just topped 34,000, a Foreign Office minister believes that the total could be as high as 50,000.
Now, this makes it Turkey's deadliest earthquake since 1939, and while rescue aid continues, the chances of finding more survivors is becoming more and more remote. Paul Hawkins with this.
A 5-year-old girl pulled out after almost a week under the rubble. Similarly, after 4.5 days and an anxious, painstaking wait by rescuers, this man was pulled out alive. Children, babies, even pets. But these moments are now even rarer. In Hatay province, Mehmet is desperate. My children are under the rubble, he says. I've been waiting for rescue teams for 5 days. Nobody comes here to help. I got out by myself. I saved my own life. We came to help you, shouts this rescuer. We came to listen, to hear your voice. Give us a sign. A disaster on this scale has called for an international response. Tens of thousands of professional and volunteer rescuers have joined the search. But it's not without its risks. This man survived and was later recovered from the rubble. It's a similar story in northern Syria. The city of Aleppo, for example, more used to the dangers and destruction of missiles than Mother Nature. The response here complicated by the ongoing civil war. Northern Syria, a patchwork quilt of territory controlled by different rebel groups and the government. President al-Assad here visiting 9-year-old Fatmeh, the only surviving member of her family. Satellite pictures of southeastern Turkey before and after the earthquake show the scale of the destruction. But the loss of life is set to climb much further, with the UN warning it's likely to reach 50,000 deaths. That would make it the world's 7th deadliest earthquake since 1950.
The epicenter of the earthquake was the worst event in 100 years in this region. As you have seen here, there has never been an international response, a Turkish response to a natural disaster as we see here in these terrible days.
Many Turks will not share that view. As the death toll rises, so does their anger at their President Erdogan.
Son tespitlerimize göre
After 20 years in power, many are questioning why earthquake building regulations weren't followed and what happened to the billions raised from earthquake taxes. The president, who faces re-election in the summer, has hit back, saying it's not possible to be prepared for such a disaster. But the loss of life on this scale means inevitably questions will be asked. Paul Hawkins, GBNews.
Let's now get up to date with all of this. We go to James Denzelo. James is from Save the Children on all of this. James, here we are a week on, death toll, they're saying, heading fast towards 50,000. I think if we can really explain to people the size, not so much of the power of the quake itself, but the size, the area involved in all of this is absolutely massive.
It is, it's vast, and it's not just a seismic fault line that this area covers, it's a geopolitical one, hence the two-tiered response we're now beginning to see between southern Turkey and northern Syria. I think, as your report showed, we're moving from a sort of window of rescue and fewer people sadly being taken from the rubble into a sort of wider window of recovery.
Need more volume.
There are now millions who are caught in the open, who have lost their homes. It's -5 currently in Gaziantep. So this is a very dangerous time to be a child exposed out in the open. And we're making sure, along with a lot of other agencies, that millions of people have hot food, mattresses, somewhere safe to be for the coming weeks.
When something like this happens, I mean, charities like yourself, you're there on the ground. Is there enough help for people? We're seeing, obviously, you know, people helping as much as they can, but is there enough resource on the ground to get these people out? They've been trapped there for nearly a week, some people now.
Yeah, I mean, it's such an important question. I would say there's never enough, quick enough, really, and the whole system, the whole logistical system in southern Turkey has been overwhelmed. You know, airports you'd normally fly into have been destroyed, hospitals collapsed, clinics gone. The number of buildings that are damaged makes it very hard to operate out of. Roads have been blocked. And this entire system was where trucks that used to move into northwest Syria, that was already in crisis and already had millions of people dependent on humanitarian aid before this earthquake hit, has been clogged up entirely. So I think that Martin Griffith, who you had on your previous package, the UN's aid chief, he has said that the UN has so far failed people in northern Syria in particular due to the logistical slowness of this response.
James, I've got 11 national newspapers in front of me on my desk here, and not one of them has the earthquake featuring as a story on their front pages. And this is the awful thing. People like you and everybody else involved in the rescue mission now have to go about their business, and the world moves on.
It does, and the world is not short of humanitarian crises at the moment. Famine in the Horn of Africa, the situation in Afghanistan is pretty awful. We're almost a year into the escalation of the war in Ukraine. It does move on. I think that the British people have been incredibly generous once again through the DEC appeal, and that will give millions of pounds that will help towards the response that will last into the months and years to come. And if you remember, these are children out of school, children who have lost some of their family members, or in some cases their entire family. So yes, there is a challenge between a story moving on and what that means for people in southern Turkey and in northern Syria. But I think in this response, such has been the profile in the last week, that it will capture, I think, people's imaginations for months to come, I hope.
Sarah and I were just talking here about, we do hear a lot about what's happened in Turkey, awful no matter where it's happened, but we sort of think what's going on in Syria. It
Been
seems
neglected a little bit,
yeah,
in terms of the news coverage.
there's less news coverage about what's going on. Or do we have a clear picture of what's happening in Syria?
I think it's far less clear. It's a sort of heart of darkness sometimes when you think about the restrictions that have been put on aid agencies being able to get to children in northwest Syria. Let's not forget that these are children who've experienced 12 years of conflict.
Yeah.
And with the numbers under the rubble are far less known than what's happening in Turkey. The death toll hence will expand and increase substantially once people are finally able to get into northwest Syria. Remember also that children in northwest Syria may have left homes sometimes as many as 20 times in their short lifetimes because of violence that continues. So I would say that the situation for children in northwest Syria is that they are the most vulnerable and they're the ones who need our help the most.
Talking about children, James, my mother actually was caught up in the 2005 earthquake in Kashmir. And one of the things that really breaks my heart, and I'd really like you to shed some light on this, is that we are seeing children being pulled out. Some of their family members have died. What happens to those children? Because I do know that they are very vulnerable, especially to child trafficking and abuse. How are you looking after those children?
It's such an important question. Children have a different muscular structure, so their ability to survive crush injury, first and foremost, is different from adults. But yes, those who are taken out, we're hearing reports of hundreds of children arriving separated or unaccompanied from their families at various safe zones in Turkey, certainly. And yes, these children are especially vulnerable. It's very disorientating, traumatized, perhaps injured. For every one death in an earthquake, you have 3 to 4 severe injuries. So making sure that there is a child protection component of this response. So the media coverage understandably focuses on people looking through the rubble and large-scale sort of vehicles digging up and trying to save lives, but also child protection, making sure that the children who are arriving in tented accommodation, that we know who they are, we know who we can try their best to find their relatives, or that we can make sure there's systems, whether run by the government or by other agencies, to care for them. I think there's been a huge outpouring of support offering to some of these orphans who have been created who've become orphaned because of this earthquake. So I think that's a hugely insidious sort of challenge from this earthquake, moving beyond the emergency phase, is to how to protect such large numbers of children. I mean, if you think about the numbers of children affected, it's the equivalent to about a third of the UK's entire child population that suddenly you're having to look after. So it's a huge scale, it's hugely difficult, and we've got to do our best to make sure we can stand up to it.
Sobering thought. James, continued good luck with what you're trying to do. James Denslow is from Save the Children. Thank you very much. I know it'll be a busy day and busy number of weeks and months ahead for organisations like Save the Children. Thank you very much indeed for that. The time now, 30 minutes past 6.
Is it my turn to...
Well, if I stop like that and nod to you, you do. Isabel, sometimes, we have names as to who should read what, but sometimes it just feels right that it's something else. That's all. So off you go with my permission.
The Prime Minister is facing a rebellion from within his own party this morning over his plans to scrap clean water regulations.
Now, peers in the House of Lords could block the government's bill to cut EU red tape if amendments are not made to protect swimmers and wildlife. This is a mess. This really is.
Yeah.
Joining us now, the diary editor of The Spectator, James Heal. James, maybe you can explain that better than we have tried to do it there. But basically, what we're worried about is that water firms, the government's going to go easy on them, and there's the possibility that there's not going to be big deterrents like 250 million quid fines. Why is this, or have we picked this up wrongly?
There's a couple of stories today, one of which is on the House of Lords. Currently, there's a legislation going through Parliament, which is the retained EU law, which is to get rid of 4,000 regulations we're going to carry over from Europe. But two of them in particular seem perhaps more controversial, one of which is the Water Framework Directive and the other is the Bathing Regulations Directive as well. And these two are about clean water, and I think perhaps people in the country obviously feel very different about that from some of the other sort of EU laws. Basically, peers in the House of Lords, Baroness Bakewell has put down an amendment which would ensure that these are kept in UK law. And if the government try to force a vote against that, it's likely the House of Lords will vote against that, and then it'll go back to the House of Commons, which could then see the MPs vote on it as well.
So the government the House of Lords will be looking for an exception on two aspects of what the government are trying to get rid of. Why would the government, when you look at this, necessarily object to fining water companies?
So that's slightly different. That's a slightly different issue to this one. This one is about how what the regulations are in place as the framework. There's a separate story today, which I agree actually shows how this is very much in the news at the moment, which is about the fines which they can impose on these companies, which is rising up to 250 million. It's to do with what the threat is proportionate. Now, the Environment Agency last month warned that they didn't think that 250 million was an appropriate level of the fine, so there's perhaps a good reason in which you can reduce the level of fine from 250 million.
So meaning it was too high a fine?
Yes, perhaps, yeah.
Okay, I think we might disagree on that.
Absolutely. I mean, what I don't understand is right at this moment, why would the government be introducing this kind of, bill? Because or even trying to abolish it. Because
just reassure people and say, look, whatever happens, believe me, we're going to stick in there and we're going to regulate these water companies.
Because it's not a vote winner. This is not going to be a vote winner, and they're going to have a rebellion in the House of Lords. So why are they doing this?
Well, quite. And I think 2 years ago we saw a similar rebellion with the Duke of Wellington, ironically putting down an amendment, and the government did meet its own Waterloo on that because we saw it go back to the Commons, and a lot of MPs then faced a backlash because voters are very concerned about this issue. And I think it's better on the government's duty to explain if they are going to actually fight against this in the House of Lords. Exactly. Today is their first signs. We've seen the rebellion, the first warning shots in this, and I'm not sure yet what the government's position is going to fully be now. They've come out and they've said that we want to get rid of all the EU regulations and then have British equivalents and British replacements for that, and I can understand that. But I think also the danger is that you just see voters will get headlines which saying that the EU government wants to water down, ironically, the regulations without putting in a replacement in place. So I think that this is why the government will probably have to back down on this in the House of Lords.
Is this music to the water companies' ears?
I think that they want some kind of regulation framework, but the question is, I think that given the ongoing focus on their high pay, which the Times is on a very high profile on today, I think that this is sort of a bad time because the government has not been seen to act on this. We've had a lot of political turmoil, multiple environment secretaries, and no one's actually done much on this. So I think that the companies themselves actually want some kind of lead on it. But given that the ongoing focus is about, should they be made criminally liable, etc., if the government don't act on this, I think Labour will move into this political space.
Yeah, I mean...
an open goal, I suppose, for the Labour Party here. They've set up a new website today, which highlights the amount of taxpayer money government ministers and officials have spent on travel. It's termed luxury travel here, and hotels.
Yeah.
What do you make of this?
Well, this is the government procurement cards, which were introduced by Labour, but which the Tories pledged to clamp down when they got elected in 2010. And I think if you go through this whole website, which I think launched officially in less than an hour, 7 a.m, details things like spending on hotels, restaurants, etc., and what civil servants have been getting up to, because the controls were loosened since COVID started in 2020. So it's about what the government spending has been on. And I think there's a real danger here because it sort of plays into a narrative around change. I think elections are won and fought on the issue of more of the same, time for change, and I think that most voters are favouring change. So by having this, it sort of plays into narratives about Tory sleaze, government mismanagement, and who has better control over Whitehall? Is it the Labour or the Conservatives?
But when you look at the detail, we're talking about £381 spent in a hotel room. Now, if we are sending our top politicians to a different country, surely we should expect them to, be in a comfortable environment. And be able to carry out their duty to the best without worrying about, we're not in a nice hotel. Surely people will be able to see through this as well.
I think there's really differences in the spending which are being outlined today. I think there's difference between regulations which have been allowed to be lax, where items which have been claimed for have not been properly labelled, such things like alcohol, and then, as you say, things that I don't think it's completely ridiculous, for instance, that we had the Chancellor last year at a G7 summit in Venice being able to stay in a decent hotel. That's probably a bit different. What I would say is that I think that people who are having a difficult time at the moment will look at this, and if the government is planning to say, well, you can't have public sector, pay rises, and you can't have all these sort of fripperies in the public sector, there's a danger that they then sort of turn around and say, well, hang on a sec, is that really the best use of taxpayers' money?
We definitely need a bit more transparency, don't we? And I think it's important. I want to know how much they've
Yeah, of
spent
course.
on paintings and decorating,
Yeah.
exactly. Those sort of things you can cut back on, but there are other things I think the public will go, yeah, I understand you've got to stay in a hotel, fair enough.
I understand why you need a taxi. I understand why you need to fly on a certain airline or whatever.
That's right.
I agree with you. Unless
Yeah.
you're involved in that, how do you know what's involved? Now, this guy, Richard Sharp, who's the chairman of the BBC, how much jeopardy is his job or his position in after he introduced Boris Johnson to a guy that was going to lend him £800,000? Surely he should have known and run a mile from being anywhere involved in this.
Well, we're still trying to work out how responsible was he against the Cabinet Secretary, because he says he was given advice by the Cabinet Secretary he didn't need to properly declare this. And so he's sort of saying, well, I've done nothing wrong here particularly. He apologises for saying MPs feel misled when he was being appointed. I think that his position is still, it's not completely clear yet, because there's a couple of other inquiries still ongoing. Obviously, the Culture Committee has concluded its report yesterday, but there's also an independent KC-led inquiry, and there's also the BBC looking at whether conflicts of interest occurred after he was appointed. So he's not out of the woods yet.
OK. James, always fascinating talking to you, giving us the insight of what's going on in the political world there. James Heal is the diary editor for The Spectator. Really appreciate it. Thank you. The time, 21 minutes past 6. Let's bring you up to date with what's happening news-wise.
The US military has shot down another high-altitude object over Lake Huron in Michigan. It's the fourth time fighter pilots have shot down unidentified objects over North America in the past week.
A girl and a boy, both aged 15, have been arrested on suspicion of murder following the fatal stabbing of a 16-year-old girl in a park in Cheshire. Brianna Gay from Warrington was found by members of the public with serious injuries yesterday afternoon. Emergency services arrived, but she died at the scene.
More than 84,000 newborn babies missed out on a health visitor checks within their first 2 weeks of life last year. According to the Office for Health Improvement and Disparities, that's the equivalent of 15% of newborns. We'll have more of your top stories after the weather.
We'll take a break there. After that, we're going to have more of all your top stories after the weather picture.
Good morning, my name's Rachel Ayres and welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office. It'll be quite a cloudy start to the new week, but we can expect some sunny spells later. And this settled weather has been due to high pressure that's been across the UK for quite some time now. It's going to be sticking around into this week, but we might just start to see some weather fronts pushing in from the west later on. Back to this morning, and it's quite a cloudy start out there with maybe some mist and fog patches around too. Though as they lift and break and the cloud elsewhere will lift too, we'll see some sunny spells developing throughout the morning and into the early part of the afternoon today. Temperatures will be doing well once again for the time of year, with highs of around 10 to 12 across southern areas. Through the rest of this afternoon and into this evening, with clear spells around, it'll be a touch cooler in some places tonight, with a risk of mist and fog, particularly across East Anglia and South East England tonight. Though looking further west, and some cloud is starting to spill its way in as we head into Tuesday morning, bringing some outbreaks of light rain and drizzle too. But this will keep temperatures up in the west, though a cooler night to come in the east, with a chance of some patchy rural frost. Now, as we look through to the start of tomorrow, and we'll start to see that cloud spilling its way north and eastwards through the morning, bringing some outbreaks of rain and drizzle, particularly across Scotland, Northern England and Northern Ireland. Elsewhere, it'll be a dry and bright day with plenty of sunshine, and temperatures will be doing once again very well for the time of year, with highs of even 13 across England and Wales tomorrow. And the weather isn't set to change too much as we head throughout the rest of the week, but by around midweek we might just see some outbreaks of rain, and temperatures will be remaining at or just above average for the time of year.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, very good morning to you on this Monday morning. We start the day, we start a new week with a new presentation team for the next 2 days. It's me, Anna Sarah Khan.
Good morning.
Yes.
Lovely to be here.
Very good to see you. So say hello to Sarah, get in touch with us this morning. So it's breakfast here on GB News to 9:30 with Eamonn and Sarah, and still to come on today's programme.
At 6:45, Kinsey Schofield has been at the Super Bowl and will be bringing us the details from Rihanna's halftime show.
10 to 8 this morning, after Harry Styles and Lewis Capaldi shared a kiss on the Brit Awards red carpet. We'll ask if it is okay to kiss people that aren't your partner on the mouth. Don't look at me like that. I know you want to, but...
We'll talk about that later.
You see, but you see, would you even kiss a relative, a mother, a brother, a sister, whatever, on the mouth? I think it's a bit incestuous, really. I don't like the idea of it.
Well, we're living in different times, Eamonn. Yeah, we're living in different times.
So
let's leave that conversation for later.
No. But people,
here we go.
People get in touch. So, are you saying that whether it's a blood relative or whether it is a friend, you and me, would you feel the urge to kiss me on the lips?
No. Well, do you know what? I just feel we're living in different times, and the way people show affection is different, and we should be a bit more open about it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't personally, and I never have done, but some people do.
But some do. A new generation?
New generation. They're a lot more touchy-feely nowadays.
Are they?
Yeah,
but then
not like a
difference?
70s crowd.
But you see, if you and me were touchy-feely, or whatever, we'd be regarded as perverts, we'd be arrested.
We wouldn't be regarded as perverts. Kissing is not perverse.
But when is it inappropriate and when is it okay?
Well, then it's a personal judgment, it's a personal choice. As long as you've got consent, I think it's your choice.
Okay.
I don't do it.
No, I'm not. No, but I'm saying that those who do it, right on the lips, full snog, smackers, right on the lips.
They don't do that. Then it's not full on. It's not full on, is it? It's just like a little peck or something.
Well, your man did it. Harry Styles and the other guy.
It was just a little peck. It wasn't a full-on snog.
There was tongues and everything. Oh my God. It was
too much information first thing in the morning. Anyway, get in touch with us, please.
Yes, how to greet people. How do you greet?
Tell us what you think.
I think it should just be a firm handshake, personally.
Or an elbow, probably.
Or maybe a hug. Hug's okay. Kiss on the cheek, but once it starts gravitating towards the centre zone, then I think
I hear what you're saying.
You have very nice teeth. Are they your own?
Yes. Oh, you talked about Ruth's teeth last week. You're not doing that on mine.
Hers are like hers are
She's got lovely teeth.
They're massive.
Anyway, shall we tell people how they can get in touch with us?
Get in touch. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Tell us
or
about
you can
snogging.
Tweet at GBNews. What's appropriate, what's not.
This week marks Children of Alcoholics Awareness Week. There are around 920,000 children living with alcohol-dependent parents in the UK
That
today.
is a massive figure. New data released to mark the campaign this year discloses that half of children whose parents are alcoholics don't want to talk about it. They keep it a secret.
Yeah. Now, joining us now to discuss resilience is resilience coach Josh Connolly. Josh, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I read here that your father actually died of alcoholism. Tell us your story, and obviously through the eyes of a child growing up, what are the repercussions of this?
Look, I think it's important to sort of understand that when I was a child, it was my normal, right? So I didn't understand that life could be any different. And for me, it wasn't until I got into my adulthood that I started to realise that there was huge impacts, right? And it was sort of long-lasting. I learnt very quickly in the house, and this is common for children in this situation, that the rules of the house are that you don't talk, you don't trust, and you don't feel. And it's not that you're ever told they're the rules of the house, but because of the stigma that comes with addiction and the sort of family secret, you learn those things very, very quickly.
Just what do you mean? I mean, was it a violent household? Was it disrupted? Was it the fact that your father could work or not work or earn money or flitter away the housekeeping or whatever? Just give us a picture of what it was.
In my instance, all of those things were true. There was violence. There was sort of domestic, violence going on within the house. But some of the real long-lasting sort of damaging wounding that I experienced as a child was that constant sort of walking on eggshells. You never really knew how my dad was going to be. I became an expert at sort of reading people's facial expressions and, judging how my dad was going to be. I became hyper-vigilant, concerned about my mum all of the time, and was always worried about how I should show up and how I should act, because I didn't want to be the person that would set my dad off on a spree.
It says here, 920,000 children in the UK are living in these kind of situations.
So it's definitely a thing. It's an identifiable thing.
And, 46%, are coping alone. How did you, as a child, did you ask for help? Did the teachers pick up? Were social services involved? Did the doctor pick up? Is nobody picking this up?
Well, look, because we know that most of these children stay silent, as I stayed silent, it's not just that you stay silent, you learn very, very quickly what people in society think of somebody like my dad, right? So you learn very quickly to not just keep it a secret, but to act like everything's okay, right? And that becomes like a common trait of children affected by parents drinking, is this consistently and constantly trying to act like everything's all right all of the time. So a lot of them are suffering completely in silence, right? Completely in silence, and are not even discovering that some of their struggles are related to a parent's drinking until they're into their adulthood and have had their own struggles.
Josh, if the parents or one of the parents is an alcoholic, is there a knock-on effect? What proportion of children turn to alcohol?
Well, we know that children are sort of 3 times as likely to have a struggle with addiction themselves if they've had a parent that struggles with it. But it's not always sort of alcohol addiction that they'll go on to struggle with. There is this key struggle when you get into your adulthood with not understanding why you struggle with the shame that you struggle with. I lived with and still do to a degree sometimes, with this constant feeling that there's something wrong with me. Yeah, I'm always trying to hide certain parts of myself because I grew up in an environment that kind of forced me to do that, right? To hide parts of myself. So that shame leads you to try and find ways to escape that, right? To try and not feel that constant shame that you feel. And that's why something like Nicola is so important, right? Because when I found that in my mid-20s, it was the first time in my life I started to realise that I'm not broken, there's nothing wrong with me, but I've been reacting to the world in the best way that I know how, based on the experiences that I've had.
Now, you're hosting an event at the House of Commons. Tell us about that, because the government really are not doing very much to help children like this, are they?
We launched a number of years ago the first ever all-party parliamentary group to support children of alcoholics. We launched that around 5 or 6 years ago, and I think it was around 4 years ago there was some funding put forward for Nicola and other charities that support children affected by parents drinking, but in 2021 that was completely cut, and so now most of these children that are living with a parent that drinks too much are receiving no like direct support from the government. Yeah, so it's important that we keep banging this drum to make sure people realise.
So anyone who knows someone like that, or any child of an alcoholic who's watching or listening today, what would you say to them?
That they're not alone, firstly, right? That the ways that they feel likely make perfect sense based on their experience, and that if they can find somebody that they can trust to be able to be open about what they're experiencing, it will make a huge difference. And Nicola has a national helpline that anyone affected by parents drinking can call and speak completely anonymously to a trained helpline counsellor who's going to help them to understand that, you know, it's not their fault that they're experiencing what they do.
Do you know what that national helpline is, or what it's
the best thing to do is visit nicola.org.uk, right? And you'll find all of the number. And what we know is that children are often so terrified to reach out that if they do visit the website, they can almost kind of do it in even more secrecy without even having to ring the helpline. We've got loads of content and stuff that young children can engage with. Yeah.
Good man. You're 11 years dry yourself?
Yeah, I got sober when I was 24 years old, which was quite young. But look, I saw what happened to my dad. I saw my dad's experiences and I realised there was only ever going to be one way that I was going to be able to break the cycle, and that had to start with not drinking. And my life is, you know, completely different as a result. And so much of that is testament to Nicola, right? And them helping me realise that, you know, there is another way for me, yeah.
But also testament to you. Congratulations on what you've achieved, and thank you so much for helping other people out there, because without your support and your passion and dedication, you know, we wouldn't even be aware of children's alcohol awareness.
Keep doing what you're doing, Josh.
Thank you.
So this week is the Children of Alcoholics Awareness Week, and it is a real thing. There are many of you out there. Thanks, Josh. Thank you very much indeed. Just after 25 to 7, we'll take a break. The newspapers next. Dawn Neeson, Christopher Biggins after this.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Let's have a look at the front pages before we review the newspapers. FT, first of all, reports on the arrest warrants issued in Turkey for building developers. It comes as the earthquake death toll passes 34,000 fatalities.
The Guardian leads with Labour condemning the so-called catalogue of waste on government credit cards.
Daily Mail talks of a secret plot to unravel Brexit as senior politicians stage secret Brexit summits.
The Metro is reporting on the increasing pressure for the BBC chairman to step down as the Boris Johnson loan scandal rumbles on.
Let's go through the newspapers. We're joined by Dawn Neeson and Christopher Biggin. Biggins, we're talking about...
You're on form, Eamonn, that's good.
We were talking about how to greet someone. I know in your world, kissing and hugging.
All the time.
All the time.
Yeah, we did cheeks, didn't we?
We did cheeks.
Yes.
But have you
When do you do lips?
Yeah, when do you lips?
When I'm in love with someone.
Yes.
That's the only time.
That is the only time I would do lips.
So if you saw Harry Styles now and he was about to pucker up, you would go, no thanks, I'll do a hug.
Well, Harry Styles.
There's always exception to the rules.
Tell us about you and Harry.
No, I mean, of course I wouldn't kiss him. No, on the lips.
You see, I would.
Would you?
Yeah, I would.
Yeah, but you're a bit of a Watson, aren't you?
That's how hypocritical you are. You wouldn't kiss me on the lips, but you would
No,
kiss Harry
I'm quite
Styles.
choosy about who I kiss on the lips. I'm not joking. If Harry Styles was there and he came up and he wanted to give a bit of a kiss as a little welcome, I would go right up to that.
Can I ask you all
I would.
this
I would
about
not
Harry Styles?
deter him.
What is it about Harry Styles? Every woman I know goes weak about Harry Styles.
No.
Yet he is... OK, Dawn, but he has this thing where he is... I don't know how you would describe him. His sexuality is...
Asexual.
Asexual.
Yes.
But yet, why do women find him, in general, the idea of him so sexy?
I think because they can't have him.
No, they can have him.
No, I don't think they can.
What do you mean?
So many have had him.
What do you mean?
He likes the yummy mummies, doesn't he, as well?
Yeah, but I think it's because he is so confident with who he is that women find that confident. But it's not toxic masculinity. It's masculinity that is appealing. It's
sexuality rather than masculinity.
But he doesn't care. He's confident. If he's got a big bow wrapped around his neck, it doesn't mean he's less of a man. And I love all of that. Dawn?
I wouldn't snog him, put it that way, for a start. I mean, Harry Styles, I mean, he's just ripping off everything Mick Jagger and David Bowie did decades ago, to be honest.
That's all right.
With you.
He's just putting a
There's
twist on
nothing
it.
new, and I mean, this all... I think it annoys... You might be able to help out on this, Biggins.
Yes.
A lot of my gay friends, he annoys them because it's like all this faux gay pretense thing, because it's not. It's quite clearly very heterosexual. And he annoys my gay friends again. Just be yourself. Stop pretending to be something you're not to sell yourself.
Well, it doesn't annoy me. I mean, I don't care, really. I mean, I thought actually, as we're talking now about the awards the other night, I thought it was a fiasco.
Did you?
Yes.
Which awards? These are the Brit Awards.
The Brit Awards, which were terrible.
Why?
I mean, well, there was no one could speak.
They were all intoxicated.
Well, they're intoxicated, and also they just don't have an education. Any of these pop stars, they just talk rubbish.
Well, they're creative, aren't they?
Oh, come
they're
on!
creative. They're artists.
Yes. My bum.
I'd like to start, if we go to the papers, the Daily Mail, you can feel their pain. They're screaming out the front of the Daily Mail today. Secret plot to unravel Brexit.
Oh,
As senior politicians and business chiefs stage a summit on future links with Europe, top Tory who helped get the EU deal warns off this secret plot to unravel Brexit. And this is from Lord Frost. What do you think, Biggins?
Well, I just think it's, it's another... What annoys me at the moment is that in politics, they're all fighting each other. Why? We're in a terrible situation. We are in a terrible situation. There's a terrible situation in Turkey. I mean, we should be thinking more along those lines than worrying about this Brexit, which has been going on forever, and now they want to unravel it all. You know, and it's I just think it's...
Do they want to unravel it, or is the difference between that and having closer trading and business links with the European Union?
Well, that's what I think they should be.
Well, this meeting, it was in a country house meeting in Ditchley Park in Chipping-Norton in Oxford, and David Lammy was there, Michael Gove was there, and it was titled, the title of it actually was how we can make Brexit work better with our neighbours in Europe. So they're not really talking about unravelling it, it's how it's been interpreted by the Daily Mail. But as Lord Frost has said, Brexit doesn't need fixing, it just needs a Conservative government. So he's having a go at how it's being handled.
Dawn, could we go to the Eye, front page of the Eye, and we've already been talking about this in the programme today. UK rivers, Sunak facing Tory rebellion over sewage in rivers. So what's this all about?
Well, you've already covered it very well and explained it very well. I mean, this is a bonfire of the EU regulations, 4,000 rules that we have that we are now trying to unravel. But, you know, of all the rules that, you know, I particularly think that one can go, it's just too much red tape. The bathing water regulations and our water framework directive are two that I thought were quite important. It's about keeping basically water clean in this country. And we know we have this horrible problem with many of our water companies literally leaking sewage on a daily basis into our rivers and our seas. And getting away with it.
The deals with the utility companies, the water companies, is too cosy from my point of view. It's, you know, they're allowed to do very little, claim that all the pipes are Victorian standard, and yet just hand out so much money in terms of dividend to their shareholders without digging holes in the ground, without making reservoirs and making things better. And this whole idea, Biggins, that the water around our coastlines, that rivers, Sarah, it really annoys you, doesn't it?
It does, because I'm actually, and you are as well, we're ambassadors for the Canal and River Trust, and, you know, the whole point for them is to keep our rivers, waterways clean.
Of course.
They were huge. They were so important for many people during lockdown, for mental health reasons, families walking along there. And then you just think the government are just going to, you know, just allow our waterways just to be free for all.
Which is disgraceful.
Yeah.
Absolutely disgraceful. They should be doing something about it. This is what I said earlier. You know, why aren't they doing things that are important, the government, rather than infighting with everybody? I mean, I just think they should be doing something.
So we've also got now on the front page of The Guardian, Labour condemns a catalogue of waste on government credit cards. What's your take on that?
Well, I mean, I didn't know they had credit cards, or rather, we gave them credit cards. So let me get this right: is this money they can spend on anything, or is it just business?
It's relating to their work, isn't it? Yeah.
And who pays that? Do they pay it, or do we pay it?
It's taxpayers'
money.
And do you think that's a good idea?
Well, you see, I think these things are easy to criticise. It's like people's tax affairs. Unless you know exactly what's going on or what is a justifiable expense or not, I think it's very easy to condemn everything outside. Oh, they shouldn't have any credit cards, they shouldn't do this, they shouldn't do that. We don't know is the thing. And if you see a hotel room down at 300 quid, how do we know if that was the only alternative left?
But do we agree that Rishi Sunak's Treasury Department spent over 3,000 on photographs to hang on the walls when he was Chancellor? What do we think about that? Because I think we shouldn't spend £3,000 on stuff like that.
On the face of it, it does seem ridiculous, doesn't it?
You know,
I agree with the point you made earlier on, actually, about sort of like, you know, they spent what was it, £4,500 on hotel rooms in Venice. Well, I want them to stay in. I don't want them to stay in a local sort of like, you know, highway chain or anything. I want them to stay in a fairly decent hotel. You can't have the Prime Minister and the Chancellor of any country staying in a travel lodge, can you? They have to stay in decent accommodation where there's a security issue as well.
Absolutely.
So on the face of it, it sounds like, oh my God, they're spending so much money on hotels, but realistically, it's sensible for them to do so. But I mean, it's like, you know, the civil servants at 14 of the 15 main departments spent nearly £150 million on these credit cards, and that has gone up by a huge amount, 70% since 2010. Yeah. But they were originally introduced in 1997 by the Labour Party, but the Labour Party are now starting a website where you can monitor how much is being spent on government credit cards, which you pay for, taxpayers pay for.
Yeah, but I just don't agree that, you know, the public should be experts on these. I look at the £3,000 for the artwork, and I think that places like 10 Downing Street, they are accessible to leaders all around the world, and they should look the part. They really should.
Yes,
look the
absolutely.
part. And they don't, actually, if you've ever been in Downing Street. But I do think that the government has access to all the country's national treasures. They could go to the museums and say, any chance of lending us?
Oh, they do that. But 10 Downing Street do have all the art galleries across the country give art each. And I think it's every 3 months they change the art there.
Well, number 11 should be doing it as well. Then,
yes.
On that.
We just need, when you see figures like this on their own, it makes your blood boil. But we need some context around it.
Yes, exactly.
And I think that's the most important thing.
Right.
Because otherwise people are just going to, you know, whilst we're living through these crisis of food, bills, etc. And we're reading £3,000 on photographs. That's my money going on. We need context.
The two extremes of the papers. I mean, the Daily Mail going on about the Brexit and trying to do Brexit, which is what the Daily Mail's put on earth to do, and the Guardian going, oh, the government's spending too much of your money, which is exactly what the Guardian are meant to do. So, but as you say, you need the context in both of those stories.
Christopher and Dawn, we're going to finish on the Turkey situation, Turkey-Syria. We say Turkey, we've got to remember Syria's involved
Absolutely.
in all this as well. And the building standards, Christopher, were a week on, and these buildings just seem to have crumbled like biscuits.
But I'm under the impression, and you may be able to help me here, that in fact they did a tax.
That's right, earthquake tax.
Earthquake tax, which, where's that money gone?
Yeah.
It hasn't been spent, and I believe it's tens of millions.
Well,
in fact, it could be billions.
Spending it now, I bet too late.
And it is, every day I watch the news and I cry.
Yeah.
You see grown men screaming. Yeah. And people being brought out. I mean, the woman who was brought out after 10 days or what it was from the rubble, and children, babies. I mean, it is just harrowing. And I just don't know how they can hold their heads up.
What about the standard of the buildings? The Financial Times is taking this one up.
Yeah, they have. Well, Turkish authorities have issued 113 developers fines, basically, because loss of life has been made worse by the level of building standards. I mean, you know, they are given money to ensure that building standards are earthquake-proof, and they just haven't been doing it. They have been, like, shoddy workmanship, and that is why so many people, and what we're up to, 29,000, over 29,000 now, and we don't know what's going on in Syria. Once we start getting the information through from Syria properly, it's going to be even worse.
The death toll could reach 50,000.
It's just horrendous. You know, the one thing I just want to say about this, because it is very, very sad, hard news on a daily basis, but it's the way humanity has reacted, the way everybody is helping, that we are working together, and as you say, Biggins, the people out there are digging with their bare hands. It's quite heartwarming the way we are all together in this, compared to all the doom and gloom that's going on all over the world.
No, I mean, when you see those shots of people saying, right, quiet, and they have to go quiet because they think they can hear something. And then they can, and then there's an excitement, and they bring someone out, and everybody is beyond thrilled. I mean, it's wonderful. I couldn't agree more with you. I think it's
got to leave it there. Dawn and Christopher will be back in 40 minutes' time with more from the papers.
Now, Rihanna made a triumphant return to the stage yesterday, performing a 15-minute set comprising the very best of her discography at the Super Bowl halftime.
Let's now speak to Showbiz reporter Kinsey Schofield, who's more on what would happen. Did you watch the game, or did you just watch the halftime performances?
Eamonn, I don't even know if I have a voice left, because I was at the game cheering for my team, cheering for Rihanna. It was amazing. She performed for 13 minutes. It was 12 songs. She had hinted all week that she had a special guest. We wondered if it was going to be Sir Paul McCartney. Perhaps it was going to be Jay-Z, T.I., some of these people she'd worked with in the past. Eamonn, it was a fetus. Rihanna is pregnant with her second baby. She just had a baby in May of 2022. So, you know, we're excited to see that there's another baby on the horizon. And what a way to show off this new pregnancy. She's made history with being the very first woman to headline the Super Bowl with a baby in her belly. Eamonn?
Well, I mean, because she looks absolutely amazing. I mean, she's been, I think she hasn't toured for about 5 years, is it? Or 7 years, I can't remember. What was the atmosphere like? I mean, I love Rihanna. I think she's amazing. Oh, wow. What was it like?
It was, you know, I always get goosebumps when you're in one of those big arenas and everyone has their flashlight out, and it's the entire venue is lit up by the flashlights. It was absolutely brilliant. And you know what? I really think she proved her strength as a singer. There was minimal choreography. There were, you know, no costume changes because she was being very careful due to the pregnancy, but her vocals were so strong, so intense, and so powerful. And I think she really impressed a worldwide audience.
Well, what else impressed you about what went on in the Super Bowl last night?
Not my team losing, Eamonn. Not my team losing. I can tell you that much. No, it was so fun. I think this is my first Super Bowl, so I was happy to be there. But my heart was crushed a little bit when those Eagles had to go home empty-handed. I mean, can't the underdogs win every once in a while? Patrick Mahomes has enough trophies and rings, but no, it was a great experience. It was super fun and lively. There was Bradley Cooper was there, Ben Stiller, Sir Paul McCartney was there, Elon Musk was there. I mean, it was the place to be.
Kizzy, it's really interesting because obviously the football is the main attraction. But I love Cara Delevingne, the supermodel. She's wearing a T-shirt saying, Rihanna concert interrupted by a football game. Weird, but whatever. Do people wish that Rihanna was on a bit more rather than the football?
You know, that's how I felt when she closed it out. I was wondering, surely there's something else left. Surely she's got a few more minutes in her.
Yeah.
I was actually surprised that it ended so soon, but maybe that's just because I'm a junkie for Rihanna. I just had so much fun, but also she did tease that special guest. So we were just waiting for somebody to pop out from anywhere.
Oh, thank goodness nothing did pop out from anywhere. But all of that's good. So who won at the end of the day? Who won it?
The Chiefs, the Kansas City Chiefs, Eamonn. But you know what's funny is my little brother asked me who he should bet on, and I just kind of was like, oh, the Chiefs, even though I was rooting for the Eagles. So apparently I'm like a really good big sister.
And where are the Eagles from?
Philly. Look, I've got my Princess Diana T-shirt on. She's wearing her Philadelphia Eagles jacket.
Yeah.
Gifted for her. And that's what I wore to the game. Did not bring me any luck, guys.
Very good. Well, it hardly rates with Leeds versus Man United yesterday, but there we go. Thank you.
Thank you,
very
Kinsey.
much indeed,
Amazing.
Kinsey. Thank you. I swear, I've never watched anything as boring as American football.
I know nothing about American football. I just about know stuff about British football, but really haven't got a clue.
The only people that work throughout the whole duration of the game are the cheerleaders.
Yeah.
Everyone else stops and takes 15 minutes off, whatever it is. Anyway, let's take a break. It's Eamonn and Sarah here. Breakfast on GB News on this Monday morning. We'll see you right after this.
Good morning, my name's Rachel Ayres and welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office. It'll be quite a cloudy start to the new week, but we can expect some sunny spells later. And this settled weather has been due to high pressure that's been across the UK for quite some time now. It's going to be sticking around into this week, but we might just start to see some weather fronts pushing in from the west later on. Back to this morning, and it's quite a cloudy start out there with maybe some mist and fog patches around too. Though as they lift and break and the cloud elsewhere will lift too, we'll see some sunny spells developing throughout the morning and into the early part of the afternoon today. Temperatures will be doing well once again for the time of year with highs of around 10 to 12 across southern areas. Through the rest of this afternoon and into this evening with clear spells around, it'll be a touch cooler in some places tonight with a risk of mist and fog, particularly across East Anglia and South East England tonight. Though looking further west and some cloud is starting to spill its way in as we head into Tuesday morning, bringing some outbreaks of light rain and drizzle too. But this will keep temperatures up in the west, though a cooler night to come in the east with a chance of some patchy rural frost. Now as we look through to the start of tomorrow, and we'll start to see that cloud spilling its way north and eastwards through the morning, bringing some outbreaks of rain and drizzle, particularly across Scotland, Northern England and Northern Ireland. Elsewhere, it'll be a dry and bright day with plenty of sunshine, and temperatures will be doing once again very well for the time of year, with highs of even 13 across England and Wales tomorrow. And the weather isn't set to change too much as we head throughout the rest of the week, but by around midweek we might just see some outbreaks of rain, and temperatures will be remaining at or just above average for the time of year.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing. You see, amazing.
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Turkey issues arrest warrants for building developers as the earthquake death toll rises to 34,000.
Good morning. It's 7 o'clock on Monday, the 13th of February. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Sarah Khan.
Yes, a new lineup for you this morning, and here's what's leading the news today.
Turkish police have issued 113 arrest warrants relating to buildings that collapsed during the devastating earthquake a week ago. It comes as a Foreign Office minister warns the death toll could reach 50,000.
The Prime Minister's bill to cut EU red tape is in jeopardy as he faces rebellion over his plan to scrap clean water regulations. The government's retained EU law bill would ditch protections for swimmers and wildlife.
The Labour Party has claimed that BBC Chair Richard Sharp's position is increasingly untenable. It comes after a committee of MPs found that he'd made significant errors of judgment in relation to an £800,000 loan to the then Prime Minister Boris Johnson.
So get in touch, say hello to Sarah, welcome her here. She's here until 9:30 and here tomorrow. Isabel will be back on Wednesday, the usual way. By email, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us at gbnews.
It's now 1 week on since the Turkey-Syria earthquake, and while the current death toll has just topped 34,000, a Foreign Office minister believes that the total loss of life could hit as high as 50,000.
Well, that makes this the deadliest earthquake since 1939, and whilst rescue aid continues, the chances of finding more survivors is becoming more and more remote. Here's Paul Hawkins with this report.
A 5-year-old girl pulled out after almost a week under the rubble. Similarly, after 4.5 days and an anxious, painstaking wait by rescuers, this man was pulled out alive. Children, babies, even pets. But these moments are now even rarer. In Hatay province, Mehmet is desperate. My children are under the rubble, he says. I've been waiting for rescue teams for 5 days. Nobody comes here to help. I got out by myself. I saved my own life. We came to help you, shouts this rescuer. We came to listen, to hear your voice. Give us a sign. A disaster on this scale has called for an international response. Tens of thousands of professional and volunteer rescuers have joined the search. But it's not without its risks. This man survived and was later recovered from the rubble. It's a similar story in northern Syria. The city of Aleppo, for example, more used to the dangers and destruction of missiles than Mother Nature. The response here complicated by the ongoing civil war. Northern Syria, a patchwork quilt of territory controlled by different rebel groups and the government. President al-Assad here visiting 9-year-old Fatmeh, the only surviving member of her family. Satellite pictures of southeastern Turkey before and after the earthquake show the scale of the destruction. But the loss of life is set to climb much further, with the UN warning it's likely to reach 50,000 deaths. That would make it the world's 7th deadliest earthquake since 1950.
The epicenter of the earthquake was the worst event in 100 years in this region. As you have seen here, there has never been an international response, a Turkish response to a natural disaster as we see here in these terrible days.
Many Turks will not share that view. As the death toll rises, so does their anger at their President Erdogan.
Son tespitlerimize göre
After 20 years in power, many are questioning why earthquake building regulations weren't followed and what happened to the billions raised from earthquake taxes. The president, who faces re-election in the summer, has hit back, saying it's not possible to be prepared for such a disaster. But the loss of life on this scale means inevitably questions will be asked. Paul Hawkins, GB News.
Well, let's now go to Istanbul, where we're joined by journalist Rayhan Bison with all of this. Rayhan, good morning to you. What sort of morning is it in Istanbul? We're a week on. The death toll climbs towards 50,000. Absolutely unbelievable, incomprehensible to think about. But tempers are rising as well, and anger is rising. Tell us about that.
Good morning. Yes, it's not been a very good morning or good day since over a week now in Turkey. And unfortunately, as you said, anger is getting like people are angry, people are devastated, people feel that they don't have anything to hold on to because, I mean, this earthquake could have been not prevented, but so many, I mean, these deaths could have been prevented. And in the last earthquake in 1999, 24 years ago, the biggest one, they changed the regulations. And unfortunately, now everyone is questioning whether the new buildings were built according to those regulations or not. And so we see people getting detained, getting arrested, and that might be putting a little bit ease to the hearts of the people in Turkey because, I mean, they seem to be responsible for that as buildings killed, not the earthquake usually.
That billions of money has been raised in this earthquake tax. People in Turkey are now obviously angry because they're going, where did this money go? You know, we see Turkey actually as a developed nation, as a modern nation. So where do people think this money has gone? What are the government saying about it?
So this money is actually according to official sources, it goes to the general budget spending, and that might have spent as road building or hospital building, like public hospitals, but it's not stated to as to where it goes. But it should have been related only to the earthquake, because it is an earthquake tax. So that's why people are angry, because Hatay, for example, is one of the deadliest places. It's gone. The whole city is now flat, and official aid reached only on the third day. So people are really devastated about this, really angry. I know that the scale is really big. The scale of the earthquake is really big. I'm not saying that the government didn't do what, their duty. I'm just saying that all this could have been prevented. There's one city, it's small, tiny place in Hatay, where no buildings were devastated. It's all intact right now. And the municipality had spoke to international media, to everyone. He said, I didn't even to my family, friends, I said, no, you have to play by the rules, you have to obey the regulations, and not a single building has collapsed in that city. I think that explains really a lot in that case.
Yeah. Now, Istanbul itself, how far away is Istanbul from the centre of where the earthquake was, or the region where the earthquake was? And do people in Istanbul have similar fears about buildings there if an earthquake was to strike?
Of course, they've been warning about upcoming potential Istanbul earthquake for many years. And unfortunately, no precaution has been taken so far. And now the municipality has just announced, after this super deadly earthquake, that they would come to houses which were built before 2000 and inspect them for free. So even, let's say, a building is inspected in Istanbul, they cannot force the people to leave that building. I mean, the economy is already bad, and we have an accommodation problem here in Istanbul. The rents are going really high. And so people, even though that they know that place is affected, they're not leaving because they don't have any alternative. They don't have anywhere else to go. And as to your the first part of your question, by plane it's maybe 1 hour to that area, and by car it will be taking you like 12 hours. So it's pretty far away. So we didn't feel it in Istanbul. But the professors they have been warning about an earthquake in Istanbul, and that might be even deadlier, because that 10 cities, they have a 13.5 million of people living, and 13.5 million people have been affected in total of those 10 cities, whereas in Istanbul, we're 20 million people. It's like one giant country. And it's the buildings are not safe, and we don't know really if we would be ready for an earthquake if it hit right now.
We're reading here as well that the Turkish authorities have issued more than 100 arrest warrants over the collapse of these buildings. And I actually saw some footage of people trying to leave Turkey and being arrested at the airport. Can you shed a little bit more light on that?
Of course. So, these people are being they're accused of causing death by negligence and reckless killing. So these people are actually they're accused of murder, and this is a serious case. And some of the contractors of those buildings, they were trying to flee the country. For example, one was trying to go to Montenegro, and with a lot of money, cash on him, and he was detained at the airport. And there is one more couple who were also detained, and now over 100 people have been detained, and some of them have been arrested. And I think this is really important to show, because it's not going to bring that people back. It's not going to do anything, reverse the pain, but at least it's going to ease the hearts a little bit, ease the anger, in my opinion.
Reyhan, well, thank you for your opinions. Thank you for your reporting, putting us in the picture of all that is going on, the very latest from the Turkish-Syrian earthquake 1 week on. Reyhan Beyzen from Istanbul, thank you very much indeed.
The Prime Minister is once again facing the prospect of a Conservative rebellion
so much.
over his plans to scrap clean water regulations.
Yeah, clean water regulations, and peers in the House of Lords could block these plans to cut EU red tape if amendments are not made to protect swimmers and wildlife in the country's rivers and lakes.
Joining us now is the diary editor of The Spectator, James Heal. Hello, James.
Hi.
Lovely to see you again. What is Rishi Sunak doing? This is not a good move, is it?
Well, I think that in the House of Lords, certainly the Tories don't have a majority, so I think they're pretty much certain to lose on this amendment. We saw a similar one 2 years ago, which they lost on. But more broadly, I think the question is about how do you get the investment you need in terms of our sewers and the sewage system. I think government ministers have been suggesting that sort of 56 billion is needed to upgrade the Victorian sewage works. But I think what the gist of your question gets to the whole point is that I think there really is some sort of political space here for the government to act, should they wish. You see what Michael Gove, for instance, is doing at the Department of Local Government and acting on cladding and the cladding scandal. And I think that really, talking to people and the politicians in this area, there is a real sense of perhaps anger at how this issue has been allowed to fester. We've seen it's a real issue of concern to voters. We've seen rebellions previously be accepted by MPs because there is that concern. And I think that the question here is about, EU laws, etc. And I think this is one of those laws that people would want to keep in place, or at least if
so
the headlines.
We're going to go light on these utility companies, these water companies. I would just love to see a league table, James, of what they make and what they're required to invest as a result of all of this, because the idea is that on their watch, under their stewardship, this country, how do I put this politely, we are an open sewer. We seem to be an open sewer. It really is bad form, and the government are looking at them and saying, yeah, we appreciate it. I know you've got a lot of internal investment and things to make there, so listen, we'll go easy on you.
I think the Times today really lists all the chief executives' pay, and sort of quite staggering numbers compared to what it was sort of 30 years ago when it was publicly owned. I think that, as you say, is that there's a real sense of sort of the water companies have been told time and again to sort of clean up this issue, and yet if you look at the figures, I think only 14% of England's rivers are actually considered as being in a fit state according to the Environment Agency, and that's a figure that's going to drop, I think, to 6% by 2027. And there's no surprise then that two national newspapers this weekend both launched campaigns on it because they can see it's an issue of concern to their readers, and it's an issue where they think that there's sort of a need for the politicians to act on this.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, moving to Labour's new website.
Which will have just gone live, won't it?
Well, I've just tried and it's gone down, unfortunately. So, I mean, that's not the greatest of starts, but yes, it's starting today.
Do you think this is embarrassing for the Tories?
I think that it's partly embarrassing. I think that it's not the kind of expensive scandal that perhaps Labour would like it to be, and they've sort of rebranded this website, they've changed it, they're trying to make a big thing about it. But it's yet another day we're talking about, issues around mismanagement, financial waste, rather than Rishi Sunak's sort of priorities, and he wants to get on the front foot about this. So it's just another example of opposition doing good opposition work, which is uncovering mess and scandal and trying to put that to political advantage.
Yeah.
Gosh, I'm just looking at the salaries of the people who run the water companies.
Yeah.
Nice if you can get it.
Yeah.
Steve Mogford, United Utilities, he gets 3.2 million quid a year. How many spills have they had in that year? 81,588. Is this for real? It's incredible. Sarah Bentley, Thames Water, 2 million quid a year, 14,713 sewage spills in that time.
And, if you think about the amount of sewage going into our rivers and you look at these salaries, people are going to be up in arms, aren't they? And this is what I don't understand, is like, when you need people to vote for you, when you are trying to say we are the party to trust, vote for us, we're going to look after the environment, we're going to look after... This is not the right thing to do.
No, and I think that it's a shame because I think under Michael Gove, for instance, a few years ago, the Department for Environment really took a lead on a lot of these kind of issues about sort of plastics, etc. And it seems to have been the case that they've taken the eye off the ball and not acted on this issue.
Yeah.
And the question is now whether can Labour try and make some sort of capital out of that and actually get some action on this issue, because I think what we consequently see is that it's an issue of real concern, and a lot of Tory marginals run through areas where you've got sort of rivers, so that's an issue they're going to face in particular Lib Dem facing areas in the south of England.
James, I think it's embarrassing that the Conservatives in particular could go to the people, whether local elections or national elections, and say, we are the party for the countryside. We are the party for business. We are the party for security. When you look at lack of investment in the armed forces, when you just look at everything, the mess the country is in, how could they, with a straight face the electorate and say, we are the people you should trust?
Yeah, I think that's a question a lot of Tory voters will be asking, and that's why they're on about sort of 25% in the polls right now, and Labour have got a big lead. And I think more broadly, it's about not even so much necessarily Tory versus Labour, it's just about people feel the country's going not in the right direction. Elections are sort of fought between, more of the same time for change, and the change element is definitely winning. I think about 60 versus 25% of voters want change, and I think that that's what they'll see next time.
Sarah made a very good point earlier in the programme. This is just like electoral suicide. People want the countryside preserved. People want fresh water. They don't want sewage. They don't want all this pee and poo in their sea around the coastal areas. It's like they could do something about this. They could stand up for people on this.
But this is what I'm saying. If you look at what domestic issues are about, it is about our local environment. Yeah, we know about, what you're doing abroad, but this concerns us, the population, on our doorstep, our countryside, our rivers, our wildlife, our walkways, our children swimming, having access. This is what we care about. This is the heart of Britain. This is our lives, our homes. And I just can't believe they don't get that. Because this is where people go. They're living in glass houses. They're just so not relatable because they don't care about these issues.
Well, I think this is exactly why the government will be forced to sort of back down on this in the House of Lords, and they'll win on this issue. And that's why I suspect that we're going to have to see much more action in this issue.
James, really appreciate it. James is the diary editor of The Spectator.
Thank you very much.
James Healy. Northern Ireland's Assembly will be recalled tomorrow. This is the latest attempt to elect a new speaker and to debate implementing crucial organisation. Don't know what that says. What sort of word is that? Organ donation legislation. GB News Northern Ireland reporter Dougie Beattie can join us live now from Stormont, which is where the Northern Ireland Parliament is supposed to sit, but doesn't really, Dougie. And, obviously, and I know, the whole thing is a bloomin' mess. And if this was happening in Scotland, if this was happening in Wales, there would be much more uproar about it if it was happening in England. But it just is a mess. We want it resolved, Dougie. Are we any closer to getting it resolved?
Well, no. No and yes is the answer to that. We are expecting a deal to be sort of coming within the next few days, we believe. The shape of a deal between London and Brussels to try and unlock the protocol, which then unlocks the Good Friday Agreement, which then unlocks consent and would let the parties back in here again. Yes, tomorrow they're going to be talking about Dahi's law. Dahi is a very brave young man. I've met him a few times, and he needs a heart transplant. And in Northern Ireland, of course, you can't have organ donation. Unlike other parts of the UK, you have to opt out. In Northern Ireland, of course, you have to give your consent for organ donation to actually happen. And before the institutions behind us collapsed just about a year ago over the protocol, that all the parties here were agreed that that could go through. But of course, it didn't make it through the legislation behind in time for the collapse of Stormont. So therefore, we're still operating in the old system of transplant and organ donation. But there is legal precedent set on this because, of course, Westminster is sovereign. It is a sovereign government. And the last time this place collapsed in 2016, when Sinn Féin stayed out for 3 years, same-sex marriage and abortion was all, those laws were passed in Westminster. So Chris Heaton-Harris could well do that and avoid any of the sort of showmanship that will go on here tomorrow to try and force unionists back into the power-sharing executive. And of course, unionists are staying out because they say that the protocol overrides Article 6 and the acts of the union, and that, of course, comes because of Brexit. So the deals that are looking now between the UK and the EU will start to show us some shape within the next few days, we believe, and hopefully that will unlock what's happening here.
Thanks for the insight, mate. Really appreciate that. Thank you very much indeed. And that majestic backdrop
beautiful building, beautiful.
It's like our Colosseum.
It's absolutely gorgeous.
It looks like
all lit up
what's
there.
What's that in Athens? It's in Athens. What's it in there?
The Colosseum.
Is the Colosseum? No, it's not. The Colosseum's in Rome.
Oh, what is it? Oh no, don't. I've got menopause brain fog. Now, don't start doing this first thing in the morning.
What is, Dougie? What's the building in Athens that sits up on the hill? The The Parthenon. Parthenon.
It is.
I think it is. Yeah, but the Stormont looks like the Parthenon. Well, except there are more visitors to the Parthenon. But anyway, that's all. Looks very
I was going to say more people use that.
Yeah.
More people use that. This will make a great golf course behind us, actually.
Fair point. Dear. Thank you, Dougie Beattie there, our Northern Ireland reporter.
Can't believe we called it the Coliseum. That's really
No, but it's early in the morning.
That's embarrassing, isn't it?
No.
Anyway, after the break, Paul Coit will be here breaking down the highs and lows from Super Bowl 57.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go. But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway, Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today.
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello there, very good to see you again, and I hope you're listening on radio as well. We are online, on TV, on radio, on anything that will happen, basically. It's Eamonn and Sarah here with you until 9:30 this morning.
At 7:45, after Lewis Capaldi and Harry Styles sparked debate by kissing on the Brit Awards red carpet, we'll be asking, is it okay to kiss your mates on the mouth?
Is it?
Well, Eamonn, I'm always up for that. You am I going to regret saying that? No.
Well, seriously, not in a million years will I ever pucker up to you. Or
You'd never pucker up to me?
No, well,
No.
I just can't.
What about the kiss on the cheek? You've ever done that with the man, the kiss on the cheek thing?
Not
really?
Maybe cheek to cheek, a sort of hug.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I wouldn't even kiss my children on the lips.
No, it's the lips is a bit different, isn't it?
No.
I've had the thing where you hug, we have that manly hug, and you shake hands and you hug at the same time, but one leans left, one leans right, and I've done it where I've been face on and thinking, now it looks like I'm going to kiss you full in the face, which is not going to be good. So no, I keep well away.
And then at 8:20, if you haven't got a Valentine's Day present yet, don't worry. Kate Hardcastle will be giving gift ideas for under £10. Well, I'd say don't bother.
Well, it's going to be too expensive now. I mean, it really is now the worst day to buy a Valentine's Day card or present.
But would you bother if it was under 10 quid? Would you? Is it worth the effort?
It's the thought that counts. Everything counts, so it doesn't matter about the cost.
Then I'd rather not do a present. I'd rather...
A meal.
Yes. Do something.
Yeah.
Or...
Do an MS deal for £10.
Or a massage, or...
Oh, my goodness. Let's not go there. How did you get from a dinner to a massage?
But I'm just trying to think, what can you do that's more personal, that doesn't involve buying a tacky, stupid present, or...
And that's free. Well, we all know what that is. We could definitely do that on Valentine's Day.
A card cost you nearly 10
quid, exactly. Today's not the day.
And then the flowers that you get.
Well, you wouldn't buy them today. You've got to be thrifty. You should have bought them 3 days ago, kept them in flower, because today everything goes up.
My wife doesn't do Valentine's Day. You know what she's like?
I celebrate everything.
I think she, early on in her life, was rebuffed by somebody, and she's never gone back there.
Do you do Valentine's Day?
I always did.
What have you got her then? Have you got her a present?
I've got her anything. She doesn't do it. She literally doesn't do it, and she has sucked the romance side of me.
Well, I'm sorry, that is no excuse.
It's an excuse. She doesn't believe in it. She doesn't go out for meals. She doesn't exchange cards.
You can always warm a woman's heart by being...
It's not her heart I want to warm. I'm just thinking.
Get on with the sport, for crying out
Let's get on
loud.
with the sport. Let's take a look at the back page. First of all, the Mail, it focuses on a review by the Referees Association. It follows two high-profile VAR mistakes during Arsenal's match against Brentford and West Ham's draw against Chelsea. You may have your own views on that. Here comes the Star. It condemns the chants made by both Leeds and Manchester United supporters that targeted victims of the Munich air disaster and Istanbul stabbings from the year 2000. And last up, the Telegraph leads on England's display during the Six Nations, which helped them overcome a stubborn Italy at Twickenham. But everybody beats Italy. Why are we getting so excited about that? Here's Paul Coit to tell me. But you're expected to beat Italy, aren't you?
It's easy to say from an Ireland fan, isn't it? It's all very easy.
Well,
I know your game.
We are the people.
Yeah, but the thing is, with Ireland, see, every time the World Cup comes along, Ireland have been amazing, like a year or two behind then, and then as soon as the World Cup, then it all sort of crumbles. But at the moment, probably the best side in the world, especially beating France. Whereas England, you're right, Italy are the whipping boys. They always have been. There's always people saying they shouldn't even be in the Six Nations. It should be back to the Five Nations. But I was a little nervous about it, but England came through. So, I mean, it was Steve Borthwick's first win, which was extremely important. So just to get through that, you know, get momentum going. Then it's Wales, who are also having a very tough time at the moment, and then Ireland and France, and they're going to be the two very tricky games.
It used to be the Four Nations, right? It used to be England, Scotland...
It used to be the One Nation. It was just England, that was it. And they all used to do quite well in that.
Right, so it was the Four Nations, then went to the Five Nations, and then that involved France.
That's right, yeah.
And then six is Italy.
That's right.
Just to give everybody a weekend off.
Is that during the game against Italy you're talking about? That's usually the week off.
Just win. People just win.
It just gives people a win, and that's it. And England have never lost against Italy, but as we did say last week, Italy gave France a little, good run last week, but England should be beaten. Jack Willis, England flanker, scored the opening try. It was 2 years ago that he played against Italy. Got a horrendous injury. Looked like he was never going to play again. So a nice story that he scored as well. So that's all good.
Leeds Man United have served up two very tight, very close games over the past week. A draw at Old Trafford. 2-2, and then Manchester United winning 2-0 at Elland Road.
Yeah, it's a good result, but don't forget Leeds are managerless at the moment.
Yeah, and hovering on the relegation.
They are hovering around there. So
they put up a heck of a fight. They did.
Well, they did. Yeah, I thought so. And Manchester United, you know, I mean, tell me, are you looking title contenders still? Or just looking at top four? Because Arsenal are faltering, Man City...
I think we're just looking at top four. I mean, since Andy Carroll dispensed with Ericsson. A goal again. No, it was
I know. I'm sorry to laugh. I know it makes you crazy.
It was absolutely brutal. Casemiro as well, losing him until we get to the League Cup final. You can't rely on too much. We've got Barcelona coming up this week in the Europa Cup as well. So there's a lot on there. Listen, we'll be very happy with top four.
I think so, because going forward, it's not about this season, it's probably about next season. Whereas we look at Arsenal, you know, they faltered again. So it's... the Brentford, I mean, Brentford were terrific against Arsenal. Yeah. But Arsenal still probably would have expected to win, but that was another game where there was crazy VAR decisions. Yeah. Again, the whole VAR thing. Year on year, there's always problems with VAR. Are you with VAR? Because for me, it's there. You can't argue with it. It's who's implementing it.
I think what happens is it's the speed that the officials are required to come up with a decision, and whether they look at the first offence or the second offence. Yeah. It's TV to blame, it's us to blame. What's keeping them so long? Well, you know, all they need sometimes is another minute, and these things would be resolved.
But the thing is, I mean, there are some decisions. You look at them, they look at them, and they look at them again, and then again, and it's just not working. It should be, because, like you say, the evidence is there. You can look at it, and if you can't get that right, you can't actually blame the fact that it's the technology, it's just those that are implementing it. But this will go on and on. There was a handball as well, West Ham, in the Chelsea game, which should have been a
Man City still breathing down Arsenal's neck, winning 3-1 against Villa yesterday.
That's right.
Tonight we've got Liverpool against Everton. We've got the Merseyside derby. 8 o'clock kick-off with that one tonight. Then that Super Bowl nonsense, which happens overnight. I mean, can you get excited about that?
Well, it's funny because it's two schools of thought here. There's either fans who are just love NFL, love American football, and there's those of us that are just never really got on board with it. But I mean, it is huge. It's huge in this country. It sells out whenever they play.
I've tried, but I don't know how you can make, you know, what should be like 35 minutes or so on the pitch last 4 hours.
Stoppy-starty. Two stoppy-starty. Anyway, Kansas City Chiefs narrowly beat the Philadelphia Eagles 38-35 last night. It was a good game.
So that was it.
Even if you don't think it was a heck of a game. And the half-time with Rihanna, it's probably the best half-time since, well, me with Aaron Lennon at Spurs at Man City the other week. It was that good, apparently. That's what I'm hearing. That's what I'm hearing.
That's the height it was.
Yes, it was.
Thanks, mate. Thank you very much indeed. Paul
with
the sport.
Okay.
So after the break, we're going to be going through the papers with Dawn Neeson and Christopher Biggins.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. B, I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8". My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back. Eamonn Holmes, back on the TV
Surprised
with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh, yes.
Oh,
already to bless.
Yeah. Oh, Eamonn. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamonn Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion, and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Sorry. Biggins telling his whole private life over the airwaves there. We'll return to that later. Biggins and Don Leeson going through the papers today. Do you know, Chris, we're having a laugh here, and goodness me, and people want a laugh, especially on a Monday.
We do need to have a bit of a laugh.
But we can't ignore what's happening to all those people, and this death toll in, 34,000 or so at the moment, heading towards £50,000 in the Syria, Turkey earthquakes. But still, some stories that defy all logic from it.
I know, like buried today in the Mirror, buried for 150 hours. And this child, a little girl, 2 years old, alive. I mean, it's just amazing. And when you consider that people are going from all over the world to help, it's fantastic. And the pleasure they must get and derive from the fact that they are saving so many lives.
Against the odds, that's what, 7 days really we're talking about now.
7 days.
You see, you know, when you see these children being pulled out and everybody's wrapped around them, I mean, you're so involved. I mean, as a parent myself, I just think, my goodness. And then I start worrying about, but what's going to happen to this child after it's pulled out? Where are his parents? How is it going to grow up? What, you know, it's not just about rescuing it. It's about what has happened to their life.
And what about the baby whose mother was dead, and she was the umbilical cord was still there?
The placenta was still attached.
I mean, and all her family were dead. I mean, it's just terrifying.
The scale of it.
The scale is unbelievable. And you're right, Eamonn, it's going to get worse.
I mean, I even saw a little dog being dug out and its head was visible. And they had to take all this debris around from it and these concrete reinforced blocks around it. And that made me emotional. They got that little dog out. It was yelping with pain as they were pulling it from under this pillar. But, I mean, it is a miracle when we talk about the child that you have talked about, that 2-year-old girl, 150 hours. Anybody that comes out of that, an absolute miracle. But as Sarah says, what are they coming out to?
I know, that is the terrifying
thing. And I think for us, a lot of people from here go to Turkey for their holiday. So
it's a great country.
It's a country that we're used to, we love, and it pains us so much to see it like that, doesn't it?
You can't begin to imagine what it's like, and that
That poor man who sat and held his daughter. That's the image I can't get out of my head. The poor man who sat and held his daughter's hand. She was 15 years old, buried, and obviously dead under the rubble. And he just sat there all night and held her hand. And it's like, even talking about that, it's like, oh my God, you just can't imagine your loved ones and what they're going through.
We just can't. Dawn, another story that I personally, I'm sure a lot of people have invested personally in it, is the Nicola Bulley disappearance. You look at her, she looks so accessible. She looks like somebody you know. She looks like somebody who you would, you know, see down at the local school or would live in your street or whatever. She just is so beautiful, so accessible. And the CCTV pictures that showed her packing up her car, bringing her kids to school, putting the dog in the back an hour before she went missing, she just didn't look like a woman who didn't intend coming back.
That's the thing, Eamonn, with this story. It's the ordinariness of what she was doing, taking the kids for school, dropping the kids off, going for a walk the dog, and then just simply vanishing. And the story has moved on slightly. This is our a witness, it doesn't want to be named, but has come forward and said he saw two men acting suspiciously near where Nicola disappeared, and they were carrying fishing rods, but they didn't have any other paraphernalia like the tackle boxes or anything that goes with it. And they were covering their faces, and this witness is saying, well, it wasn't particularly cold, which you could understand maybe if they had a scarf around their face. And he thought they were acting suspiciously, but thought nothing of it, then heard that Nicola had disappeared and reported it to the police. And this is where there is a lot... I mean, I don't want to criticise police. They do an awful lot of good work. But the police didn't get back to him for 9 days to investigate the lead he had given them. And you have to wonder, well, why? There are so many mysteries, so many unanswered questions about this. But, again, we're talking about the children in Turkey. But, I mean, Nicola's two little girls, like 6 and 9... And, you know, every day they just want their mum to come home. I mean, you know, I'm sure none of her family can absolutely get their head around sort of like the fact that she's just... Where is she? Is she in pain? Does she need help? But those poor little girls, how do you explain to children of that age what's happened? It's incomprehensible. It is.
Just moving it on a little bit, do you feel that this story has impacted your life? Like, I do take my dog out for a walk in my local park at 7:30.
And you probably wear a hat like she's worn.
You know, and I am not a scared person. I go running by myself. This has actually scared me. And I feel a little bit vulnerable, and I don't like that feeling. And part of the reason is because the police, I feel, they're not giving me confidence that they're capable of sort of moving things forward quickly and putting public safety as a priority. Well, they didn't corner off all of that sort of stuff. But it's just like, what is going on?
You can sit on the bench where she disappeared from.
But the police are at the lowest of low, aren't they, when you consider what's going on with the police? You know, the fact that they're rapists and people like that. You know, it's got to look at itself a lot more. I mean, I think, for instance, I find this bizarre that they've spent all this time not going down... The fact that all of us know that she didn't slip into that water, and the fact that they couldn't find her, then surely you'd move on, because there must be another reason. And why aren't they not going down that other reason? It's bizarre.
It is the most curious case.
Does it make you, as a female, worried?
It's not so much, I have to admit, but what does keep going through my mind is when you have, say, someone you love, like your other half, or a child going off to play football on a Saturday morning, your other half walking the dog or going to the shops, and they're just never coming back.
Right,
that uncertainty.
Let's look at other issues. We had the Brit Awards at the weekend. They were gender neutral, weren't they? Or as far as I know, they were.
Yeah.
So also, what were these awards last night then, Christopher, in the Telegraph?
Well, these were the What's on Stage Awards. And it's interesting, the Brit Awards were complaining bitterly that there were no women getting awards or being, in fact, nominated. Whereas here... I mean, it was unbelievable. The actresses galore were being nominated. And, of course, the wonderful Jodie Comer won Best Performance. And it's interesting...
Yes, it wasn't Best Actress or Best Actor.
It was Best Performance. Yeah. So she was up against a lot of men, David Tennant, Jonathan Bailey for Cock. Do you see Cock?
Where's this going? Sorry.
Called Cock in the West End.
No, I'm afraid I haven't had the pleasure.
Oh well, it was excellent, really good, very. It was on the Ambassador's Theatre.
I don't really want to ask what it was about.
I was just going to say.
I'll leave that to your imagination. But you know, it was a lot of men and women being voted for the same category, and which was great. I think. You know, I think that is good. I mean, I think that. I'm not too sure about the neutral gender feeling that goes on nowadays.
I think it's normally the women that lose out. The Brits, it's certainly gender neutral, so you didn't have the best female performer and the best male performer. It was just the best performer, and it was all men.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair to Harry Styles, who won, he did actually name-check all the women that have been nominated.
I thought was great.
But it's always the women that lose out in.
Yeah, but they didn't lose out last night. At the What's On Stage
No,
Awards.
that's what I'm saying. That is actually, you know, the one that stands out as being different. But the music awards tend to, if you have a gender-neutral category, it's always the men that actually get most of the nods and the women lose out.
But if we want equality, men and women treated exactly the same,
I'm not entirely sure this is going down the right road to do it, I must admit. I think, because, you know, male and female performers bring different things to the performance, so why do we need to...
But the thing is, women aren't that represented in the industry anyway, so we've kind of got like a handicap anyway before you even start.
Well,
there's not enough of us in the industry.
So more women in the industry, more nominations, please.
I must say I prefer Best Actress and Best Actor.
Yeah.
I think that is, you know, because you're right. It is a very different thing, acting, you know, from male and female.
Talking about male and female, men usually buy women rings when they get engaged. Now, when these women get married, they're opting to basically say,
upgrade them.
That was all very nice, Cyril, when we were dating and whatever, and you were a trainee apprentice and whatever, but now we earn more money. We want to upgrade our engagement ring.
You know, I can't believe this story. Why would you... My husband... I mean, it's got a diamond chip. It's very... It wants to be a diamond when it grows up. But my husband put that ring on my finger when I was 18 years old. It's very rarely been off. I would never dream of upgrading that in a million years.
Because
I am that woman that's going to upgrade. Honestly.
Moving swiftly on.
You know why? Because actually, my engagement ring... This isn't my engagement ring, but it fell out when I was working out, OK? So I said to Steve, I said, well, I want, now that, you know, it's fallen out, I'm not going to get exactly the same one. I'd like to upgrade. Well, it still hasn't been done, but, you know. But why would you go for the same one if you can get something a bit better?
How long did it take you chiselling the old one out? So it was loose, darling, honestly, but that big one over there.
But why not? Why not?
You're going to go for another sapphire or a diamond this time?
It was a diamond.
Well, it was a diamond. I thought you said sapphire, sorry.
Guys, got to say goodbye to you two. They're going to be back in 40 minutes' time because we're talking about kissing on the lips and who you would do it to and with and whatever. Before we do that, a firm handshake is all you're getting from me. Before we do all of that, let's bring you up to date with what's happening news-wise.
The US military has shot down another high-altitude object, this time over Lake Huron in Michigan. It's the fourth time fighter pilots have shot down unidentified objects over North America in the past week.
A girl and a boy, both aged 15, have been arrested on suspicion of murder following the fatal stabbing of a 16-year-old girl in a park in Cheshire. Brianna Gay from Warrington was found with serious injuries yesterday afternoon. Emergency services arrived, but she died at the scene.
More than 84,000 newborn babies missed out on health visitor checks within their first 2 weeks of life last year. According to the Office for Health Improvement and Disparities, that's the equivalent of 15% of newborns.
OK, we've been talking about this all morning. Is it OK to kiss your friends on the mouth? OK? Tony says, since COVID, you're lucky to get a handshake. John says, I'm old-fashioned. The only time I've given my daughter a kiss is on the cheek, is when I was in hospital congratulating her on the birth of my grandchildren. Everything else has been a no-no. Anna says, kissing friends on the lips, just not pucker. Sam?
Sam says, I think it's down to personal choice. I'm with you, Sam. And Sean says, in my opinion, the Harry Styles and Lewis Capaldi kiss feels like a cry for attention.
Let's find out now what Stephanie Tetchy thinks about this. She's our showbiz reporter. A cry for attention, what would you say?
I think it is a cry for attention because, you know what, in their defence, the Brits is the most booziest night on the calendar, full of debauchery.
Yes.
So I'm not surprised to see things like that. There's probably worse things happening behind the scenes. But the thing is, we're looking at two characters who are quite flamboyant.
Yes.
Lewis Capaldi, he's a wild card. Harry Styles, he's no longer that teen heartthrob that we saw in One Direction. Over the past few years, he's been quite androgynous with his style. He's been very quite, you know, tight-lipped on his own sexuality, but he seems very much a man who's comfortable to kiss another man on the lips.
Would you fancy him?
No. No, I would not fancy him. And I probably would be put off if I did see a man that I was interested kissing another man.
Would you?
I would, Sarah, because I'm just like... For me, I know... You know, the terms of masculinity is changing over the past few years. Like, I think there's more bromances. And men are being able to be more affectionate for me, but I still like a traditional man, a man who's like, my lips only belongs to my woman or my wife or whoever. I think it's a bit too far. I think it starts with kissing, and then what else can it lead
But you know, Eamonn, when we're talking about men kissing on the lips, let's just take Manchester United. They win the Champions League. I'm telling you, you're euphoric. The blokes, they will go and kiss each other on the lips, and we're talking. They do.
I've never seen
They
that.
They grab their heads and
Chelsea supporters may do that, but it's not. No.
There are those moments of joy.
But can I just say, I've got a 14-year-old son, okay, and you know he's got his friends. They are this generation. They're touchy-feely. They're comfortable. They talk about their emotions.
They're touchy-feely, yet they're not touchy-feely.
I know, but it's just a bit more tactile, and I think it's a good thing.
Yeah. Okay.
You're comfortable in your skin. You know who you are.
If Stephanie came in here now...
Yeah. Who?
Yeah.
Stephanie.
All right, sorry.
Stephanie, would she be tetchy? That's the thing. Would she... If she came in now and I hugged her, which I could do, I could kiss her on the cheek, I could shake her hand.
Yeah. Yes, I agree.
But if I, Stephanie... Would I step over the mark, because I feel I would be, if I kissed you on those
Yes, I think so, because I think kissing someone on the lips is kind of invading their personal space. And, you know...
It's intimate.
It's too intimate. And some people even say kissing is more intimate than sex, you know. Even though it was a quick peck on the lips for Harry and Lewis, still, it's that moment of just going overboard with affection. And I think we always criticise men saying that they're not too open enough, but, you know, Harry and Lewis's kiss, people have accused them of queer-baiting. So queer-baiting is a term where someone's acting quite camp, but they're not officially queer. So some people actually find such things offensive if you're not gay or LGBTQ+.
Really?
Yeah. But when it comes into showbiz, I prefer to do showbiz kisses where it's just air kisses. But on showbiz, we've seen so many times where there've been offensive kisses. Remember the VMAs in the 2003?
It's about consent.
Yeah.
It's about consent. Look, I'll be very clear. I don't kiss my children on the lips. When they were tiny little babies, of course. I don't kiss my teenager on the lips. I don't kiss my daughter on the lips. And I don't want to be kissed on the lips when I greet somebody. I'm in a professional environment, but to be fair, I don't even kiss any of my girlfriends on the lips.
Neither
It's just
do
not.
I.
It's not what you do.
No.
But when I see sort of showbiz, creative artists in that atmosphere, having a few drinks, give a kiss, I see it in that context, in that moment.
You remember that kiss between Madonna and Britney Spears on stage in 2003?
That was so rehearsed,
That was a full lip lock, where Harry...
That was meant to shock.
Out to shock.
It is, and it's a shocking industry.
But you see, we talk about our industry, and I find this with friends who are not in the creative arts, whatever it is. It's very normal to put nice to see you today, Stephanie, Eamonn XX, or kiss in the cheeks. But if we worked in other industries, I don't really want to generalise about it, but, you know, there's other industries that it would be...
You wouldn't.
You just would not do it.
You wouldn't.
And your partner would be outraged by it. So we are quite strange that we can touch and feel and this is what, darling, that's what it's all about, and I can kiss your hands and I can hug you. It's great being me, isn't it, actually?
But it's familiarity, I think, as well. But the problem is we're now living in this generation where the lines are all blended in terms of how...
In some areas they're not.
No, I think the rule book's all out of the window now, Eamonn. I think...
Really? But if we worked in a factory, if we worked as motor mechanics or whatever... No, I'm saying whether you're boy or girls or whatever it is, I just don't think you walk in and kiss the opposite sex
No,
or the same
but I
sex?
think Showbiz is different. You know, it's one of the most booziest
carry on
nights.
talking about this forever, couldn't we?
We can. There's no rights or wrongs. The only thing a man shouldn't do is slap a woman on the bum. There's no if, buts or maybes about that.
Don't even go there. Don't even go there.
After the break, see you
After
then.
the break.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons? I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Turkey issues arrest warrants for building developers as the earthquake death toll rises to 34,000.
Hello there, very good morning to you. It's just after 8 o'clock on this Monday, the 13th of February. You're tuned into Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn Holmes and Sarah Khan, your pairing this morning. Here's what's leading the news.
Turkish police have issued 113 arrest warrants relating to buildings that collapsed during the devastating earthquake a week ago today. It comes as the Foreign Office Minister warns the death toll could reach 50,000.
The Prime Minister's bill to cut EU red tape is in jeopardy as he faces rebellion over a plan to scrap clean water regulations. The government's retained EU law bill would ditch protections for swimmers and wildlife.
The Labour Party has claimed that BBC Chair Richard Sharp's position is increasingly untenable. It comes after a committee of MPs found that he made significant errors of judgment in relation to an £800,000 loan to then Prime Minister Boris Johnson.
And consumer expert Kate Hardcastle will be going through the best savings you can make on Valentine's Day without losing a spark of romance.
We'd love you to get in touch the usual way via Twitter or email and let us know where you're watching or listening to us from.
A lot of you talking about the rebellion over sewage protection that's leading our news this morning. Michelle says, this is why I don't holiday in the UK. I don't like the idea of swimming in sewage.
Yeah, David says, I was an engineer in the water service for 10 years. Unfortunately, I can tell you that sewage overflowing occurred on a very regular basis. It's terrible.
When you look at the figures, we're not talking about hundreds of breaches. We're talking about not even thousands, tens of thousands of breaches with raw sewage. Paul says, I think people who live in built-up areas cause most of the water contamination. In my view, there are too many gardens covered over. Well, that's a sort of separate issue. But also what we throw down are drains as well, and the bleaches we put down and the all sorts. Gosh, when you think of things that even...
I know.
That all of us push down the drain.
The cleaning detergents and all that kind of thing. Tom says, in my opinion, it's hilarious that we're being taxed so highly by the Conservatives to save the planet, and yet we're expected to live in a tip. It's got a fair point.
Yeah, fair point. Anita says this government has to go. They won't be happy until they have destroyed this earth. OK, keep your views coming in. Throughout the programme this morning, we have been reflecting. It's now a week on since the Turkey-Syria earthquake, and whilst the current death toll has just topped 34,000, a Foreign Office minister believes that total loss of life could hit as high as 50,000.
This makes it the deadliest earthquake since 1939, and while rescue aid continues, the chances of finding survivors is becoming more remote. Paul Hawkins has this report.
A 5-year-old girl pulled out after almost a week under the rubble. Similarly, after 4.5 days and an anxious, painstaking wait by rescuers, this man was pulled out alive. Children, babies, even pets. But these moments are now even rarer. In Hatay province, Mehmet is desperate. My children are under the rubble, he says. I've been waiting for rescue teams for 5 days. Nobody comes here to help. I got out by myself. I saved my own life. We came to help you, shouts this rescuer. We came to listen, to hear your voice. Give us a sign. A disaster on this scale has called for an international response. Tens of thousands of professional and volunteer rescuers have joined the search. But it's not without its risks. This man survived and was later recovered from the rubble. It's a similar story in northern Syria. The city of Aleppo, for example, more used to the dangers and destruction of missiles than Mother Nature. The response here complicated by the ongoing civil war. Northern Syria, a patchwork quilt of territory controlled by different rebel groups and the government. President al-Assad here visiting 9-year-old Fatmeh, the only surviving member of her family. Satellite pictures of southeastern Turkey before and after the earthquake show the scale of the destruction. But the loss of life is set to climb much further, with the UN warning it's likely to reach 50,000 deaths. That would make it the world's 7th deadliest earthquake since 1950.
The epicenter of the earthquake was the worst event in 100 years in this region. As you have seen here, there has never been an international response, a Turkish response to a natural disaster as we see here in these terrible days.
Many Turks will not share that view. As the death toll rises, so does their anger at their President Erdogan.
Son tespitlerimize göre
After 20 years in power, many are questioning why earthquake building regulations weren't followed and what happened to the billions raised from earthquake taxes. The president, who faces re-election in the summer, has hit back, saying it's not possible to be prepared for such a disaster. But the loss of life on this scale means inevitably questions will be asked. Paul Hawkins, GB News.
The death toll is rising and it's the worst disaster in this area for over 100 years. Now, earlier this morning we spoke to Save the Children's James Denslow about the current relief efforts.
Now millions who are caught in the open, who have lost their homes. It's -5 currently in Gaziantep. So this is a very dangerous time to be a child exposed out in the open. And we're making sure, along with a lot of other agencies, that millions of people have hot food, mattresses, somewhere safe to be for the coming weeks. The whole logistical system in southern Turkey has been overwhelmed. You know, airports you'd normally fly into have been destroyed, hospitals collapsed, clinics gone. The number of buildings that are damaged makes it very hard to operate out of. Roads have been blocked. And this entire system was where trucks that used to move into northwest Syria, that was already in crisis and already had millions of people dependent on humanitarian aid before this earthquake hit, has been clogged up entirely.
We are seeing children being pulled out. Some of their family members have died. What happens to those children? Because I do know that they are very vulnerable, especially to child trafficking and abuse. How are you looking after those children?
It's such an important question. Children have a different muscular structure, so their ability to survive crush injury, first and foremost, is different from adults. But yes, those who are taken out, we're hearing reports of hundreds of children arriving separated or unaccompanied from their families at various safe zones in Turkey, certainly. And yes, these children are especially vulnerable. It's very disorientating, traumatized, perhaps injured. For every one death in an earthquake, you have 3 to 4 severe injuries. So making sure that there is a child protection component of this response. So, you know, the media coverage understandably focuses on people looking through the rubble and large-scale sort of vehicles digging up and trying to save lives, but also child protection, making sure that the children who are arriving in tented accommodation, that we know who they are, we know who we can try their best to find their relatives, or that we can make sure there's systems, whether run by the government or by other agencies, to care for them. I think there's been a huge outpouring of support offering to some of these orphans who have been created by, who've become orphaned because of this earthquake. So I think that's a hugely insidious sort of challenge from this earthquake, moving beyond the emergency phase, is to how to protect such large numbers of children. I mean, if you think about the numbers of children affected, it's the equivalent to about 1/3 of the UK's entire child population that suddenly you're having to look after. So it's a huge scale, it's hugely difficult, and we've got to do our best to make sure we can stand up to it.
The Prime Minister is once again facing the prospect of a Conservative rebellion over his plans to scrap clean water regulations.
You keep going.
Peers in the House of Lords could block the government's plans to cut EU's red tape if amendments are not made to protect swimmers and wildlife. So in the studio, we've got Tom Harwood.
Very good morning to you.
Good morning to you. Sorry, it's a bit clumsy there. That's probably my fault. I wanted to ask you, raw sewage was discharged into the English rivers 375,000 times by water firms. This was reported in The Guardian last year. what is Rishi Sunak thinking? Why now, and why at such a vulnerable time for the Tories?
Yes, so currently what happens if there is a potential for risk, overflow or indeed leaking within the water system, water companies have been discharging water into other alleyways of water, rivers and such like. Now, there was an environment bill going through the House of Commons and the House of Lords last year that saw a number of different amendments trying to solve this in different ways. One of those amendments that got the most attention was promoted by crossbench peer Lord Wellington, and his amendment wanted to sort of overdo the entire infrastructure of our waterways, sort of redo all of our sewage systems. And the government thought that that was too expensive because replacing all of that infrastructure is an enormous job. So they wanted to do it in a more iterative way and try and encourage companies to do more in terms of investing in that infrastructure. So there are different ways of trying to assume the same ends. But clearly this has become a very emotional issue. And there are lots of different stories about it because part of this, part of the Environment Bill and looking at all of it is increasing the fines that these water companies may have to pay if they break the law, if they dump too much sewage in our rivers and waterways. And
But what scares me when you say that is the government is not going to be held accountable if it's their kind of wish for the water companies to take responsibility. But we know water companies are never held accountable because they're always giving excuses. So I actually think this is the one topic where people say, no, we want you, the government, to be responsible for making sure our waterways are clean and our rivers are clean. We don't want you to pass this over to the water companies because they're already making a mess of it already.
And in the last year or so, there's been a lot of debate within government around this. There was a proposal currently, fines are capped at £250,000 per water company. Now, the previous Environment Secretary reportedly wanted to increase that to £250 million to fine those water companies. The risk there, however, is that some people within the Environment Agency say that that is just too large a set of fines that would discourage people from investing in our waterways in the first place, and that perhaps there should be a middle ground found, not quite 250 million per company, maybe more than 250,000 per company, somewhere in the middle there. And that seems to be the debate currently with the current Environment Secretary, Therese Coffey, wanting to perhaps not go as far as 250 million per company, which could, after all, put some of these companies out of business, and then there wouldn't be any sort of investment in that infrastructure at all.
OK.
Tom, thank you very much indeed. Meanwhile, the government is facing increasing pressure to boost defence spending to cope with what officials are calling a new era of security. This coming as America shoots down a fourth unidentified object after it flew near sensitive military sites. Defence editor of the Evening Standard, Robert Fox, joins us now. Robert, what do you make about this proliferation of UFOs over Canada and the USA?
Well, if you ask the Taiwanese, they've been around for a long time.
Yeah.
It does seem that all four, or possibly even five, it's taken a lot of hard work to knock them down, really are part of the Chinese surveillance balloon effort, which is about communications. It shows you what we've all been writing about for a long time, that the space dimension of warfare and the near space dimension in low-level satellites and communications, and boy, are we seeing that in Ukraine, is now very much with us. It's not quite a new frontier, but it's a newish frontier.
Yeah, and it's a newish frontier when it comes to decisions about spending money. I'm not trying to get the government off the hook about funding our armed forces, but surely when it comes to looking at how they should be funded, should the money be going in different areas, different directions?
Well, it's got to be decided. You can't actually say that in a 40-second soundbite, which is the problem. And this is the problem for the government. This government, constituted with this party, no more than the opposition. They're both in the same boat. They hate defence. It's difficult. It's complicated. And to mix a metaphor, it's a moving target. It's changing all the time. Look, we're getting used to this terrible war in Ukraine, appallingly, because it's in the headlines in and out. But it came up in this way quite unexpectedly. How do we respond to it? But if we respond to that, are we anticipating enough? What else is going on? Where does Britain need to be? And there's a lot of controversy, particularly in the Conservative press. Oh, we haven't got sufficient forces to face the Russian. We can't put a division in the field, which is a classic headline again. Actually, that's meaningless. We haven't put an old-style division in the field since World War II.
Yes, but we're asked to. I mean, interpret this for me. NATO is uncertain about whether Britain is ready to take over from Germany as NATO's highest readiness force. So it's reported that Britain is saying, not just quite this year, give us another year before we step in there. Is that not what they'd be required to do, the traditional defence?
That's gobbledygook.
Right?
From top to bottom, that sentence. Who is NATO? Who has decided this? Britain has to take over a role as a command of a rapid response force in Estonia, where it's got Challenger tanks and it's actually been training crews, not only of Estonians, but also, I suspect, of Ukrainians. It's saying, because we're doing other things, can we face it and do something else? There are urgent things happening. But by the way, this kind of force structure, which we're talking about, go through a complete change after July, because NATO is going to change how it does its business in the field from the summit at Vilnius. We know that. It's going to be much more reactive, proactive, but, and this is the thing that's difficult for politicians in this country, we're going to be asked to be more on the front line. We're going to have more troops to be able to go into all kinds of frontline and support positions. Well, with an army of 70,000, 75,000, what can you do with that? They're going to have to change over the next 5 years the way we do volunteer service, part-time service, contract service. But I have not yet come across a politician, with the exception of Ben Wallace, who I don't think is going to be around for much longer as Defence Secretary.
Why?
Well, because I think that he's looking for other jobs. There are other possibilities, but that the rest of the front benches, one is saying, is just not ready for the challenge, not that's coming up, that is here now.
And are not ready to spend on it either.
No. Because treasuries do not like it.
Right.
I mean, it was very interesting to hear John Healey, the defence spokesman of Labour the other day, absolutely refusing to answer a question whether Labour would increase, if it got into power, expenditure on defence.
Because they just don't know.
And his fallback position was, it's all down to Rachel Reeves. Rachel Reeves' culture is the Treasury. Yeah. The Treasury doesn't like defence. Sorry, it's the hamster in the Ferris wheel.
Look, as we approach this Ukraine 1 year on and the Russian invasion, why haven't the Russians, with all their armaments, why have they not done better than they are doing?
Because it has been much weaker than they realised. It's riddled with corruption. They threw in 120,000 troops. They've lost, killed and injured nearly 200,000. They've got 300,000. They can't train them sufficiently in time. Putin has turned his economy to a war economy, so he has to live or fail as a leader, not as a politician, but as a military leader now. That is the problem. No, they haven't done well up to now, but they're going back to default position, the old Soviet doctrine, which is just throw the numbers at it. This terrible fighting that's going on in Bakhmut. They claim to have taken a village. I'm sure they have been gaining ground. But look at the losses. They've been losing up to nearly 1,000 a day on some days there. It's an extraordinary state of affairs. And somehow the Ukrainians are hanging on. Two things. It is absolutely trapped in bloody stalemate at the moment, and both sides are looking at that. Russia, unfortunately, thinks it wins by stalemate going on, maybe into next year. The Ukrainians have to break out of that, because look what it's doing to its society, its economy, although that they're still up to the fight. And the third point with this is that anything could suddenly happen.
Yeah.
That front round Bakhmut could collapse.
Okay. Robert, appreciate your analysis of things, Ukraine 1 year on, and the state of British defence spending. Robert Fox is the defence editor at the Evening Standard. Thank you very much indeed.
It's just gone 20 past 8. Let's bring you up to date with the news.
A girl and a boy, both aged 15, have been arrested on suspicion of murder following the fatal stabbing of a 16-year-old girl in a park in Cheshire. Brianna Gay from Warrington was found with serious injuries yesterday afternoon. Emergency services arrived, but she died at the scene.
More than 84,000 newborn babies missed out on health visitor checks within their first 2 weeks of life last year. According to the Office for Health Improvement and Disparities, that's the equivalent of 15% of newborns.
A small asteroid lit up the sky above the English Channel. This is this morning. It was a metre-wide meteoroid seen shortly before 3 a.m. The European Space Agency said the object was expected to safely strike the Earth's atmosphere near the French city of Rouen. So that was only a metre wide. That
It looked
asteroid
spectacular,
there.
didn't it?
Oh, certainly did. Wouldn't like that coming down in my roof or my back garden. We'll take a break there after that.
Yeah, we will do. And then we're going to be talking to consumer expert Kate Hardcastle, who's going to be giving her ideas for Valentine gifts that won't break the bank. That's what we need.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit off.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Now, with Valentine's Day around the corner, the shops are full of all things heart-shaped to buy.
There are. Well, you see, this can be expensive. But you see, what price can you put on love? I always say.
Exactly.
But if you do put a price on love, there are plenty of low-cost ways to show someone you care without breaking the bank.
So joining us now to share her top tips for Valentine's Day is consumer expert Kate Hardcastle.
Hi, Kate.
Yeah, lovely to see you.
Good morning.
As far as I'm concerned, if you're buying it today, you are going to break the bank because it's expensive today.
I think we used to feel like that, but definitely the cost of living crisis has prompted a lot of retailers to realise that actually sometimes it's about £5 and under. It's just a token of love to say, I'm thinking of you. And I think we've got to get that mindset.
Yeah.
Be it Christmas, Easter, Valentine's, retailers are always going to push those seasonal times of year to prompt us to spend. That's an opportunity for them to fill the baskets.
Yep.
But at the same time, we've got to have a budget in mind. So I think we can still do a nice little fun note for Valentine's.
So if there is a gentleman or a lady and they're desperate to buy something, what options have you got for us?
Well, bear in mind, we're going to always, what we always say, budget to start with.
Budget.
If it's a £5, it's £5. Do not be tempted over that. Do not guilt into this. This is about saying, I love you, in a gesture, not going above and beyond. I mean, I've seen bouquets at £40,000 this morning, gold-encrusted roses. I'm sure Ruth is about to receive
exactly.
one of
I think
those.
that's on order from Eamonn.
Thank God she doesn't do Valentine's Day. So this is particularly good if you're kids as well, or teenager.
Yeah, I mean, it's a nice little token. We've got some nice little things with us this morning. I'm going to pass you one of these.
Yes, I've tried these. These are great.
Have you tried these?
Yeah, they're brilliant. They warm up on your eyes, don't they?
That's right.
They're lovely.
This is the gift of sleep. You can buy these from just £3.75 for one.
Lovely.
And if you just leave it on a minute, Eamonn, it will start to heat
fall asleep.
up. And you do actually fall asleep.
Yeah,
Come on,
they're
really
brilliant.
Good,
They
aren't
are
they?
really
much
good.
to get me to fall asleep.
So they're kind of heat generated by the heat from you, and that's it. Pop them over. Best night's sleep, £3.75.
But do you think you want to sleep on Valentine's night?
Look, I think you've got to be realistic.
That's the last thing you want to be doing.
You've got to be realistic about sleep. It's a gift, and if you feel good about sleeping, you feel refreshed, who knows what you might do the day after, 360 days after.
And after an energetic night, you might need a good night's sleep.
A good rest. Yeah, so we've got £3.75. We've got the tap for tea now. Obviously, a good Yorkshire woman always likes a tea on demand. £5.
Oh, my goodness, don't give that to Eamonn, because he'll be pressing that every 2 minutes. I think that is not what you need.
That.
You can get that from Oliver Bonus. Maybe it's just you're on a card budget. This is quite sweet. Particularly fans of Friends, You're My Lobster. That was the Phoebe line, the idea that lobsters always clutch claws forever. And that gets a nice little enamel pin
and how
on
much
it.
is that?
That is £3.99 from Waterstones. So it's like a card, but with an extra something that someone can have as a memory, a keepsake.
You're My Lobster.
You're My Lobster.
It's not impressive.
We'll not be buying
what else have we
lobster.
got?
We've got both sides of the budget here. We've got M&S have come up with these love letters. Now, sadly, all letters of the alphabet aren't included in the pack, which I found a little bit difficult, but we just about managed to spell GB News there. But you get this array for just over £1. So nice little jelly sweeties in this little cute box, which again, is nice token.
So the jelly
gesture.
sweets are just over £1?
Just over £1, £1.25.
And what about the biscuits?
Now, the biscuits are our posh purchase. This is a brand
look
called
nice.
Biscuiteers. But the reason I've brought them in, Eamonn, is because you can still order today up to midday, I think it is. 4 p.m. today for delivery tomorrow.
Wow.
So this is your emergency. I've got a bit of budget, but I need to get it somewhere tomorrow. They've got an array of different biscuit designs.
They're brilliant.
They are pretty phenomenal. They taste great. This is called the Art of Love.
This is a very nice gift to receive, and I've been sent this Biscuiteers gift, and it's very special. It's really, really sweet.
Isn't it? It's, you know, the packaging is sensational. So you can get this from Biscuiteers. There is a 10% discount if you have a look online for new purchases. So if you've not ordered from them before, that takes it down, obviously, by nearly £4. So it's posh, but definitely something that's Instagrammable.
My mother met my father when they were 16, right? And she died the end of last year, and she was 94. And she still had a Valentine's Day card that Daddy sent her.
You see, that's it, isn't it?
From 16.
That's beautiful.
I've kept all my Valentine's Day card from my husband so far.
Yeah, they wouldn't be
What about the other ones?
Wouldn't be money at all,
I think
would
they're
they?
really, they're really personal to me. Of course. And now my kids make me little Valentine's cards saying, I love you, Mummy, and I think they're really precious.
Well, I think, free. We did Valentine's cards as a family this week and we made them all, but absolutely free. Most people have got a smartphone. You can, of course, send a playlist, which used to be, in my day, a mixtape. So if you have no money but a bit of time, put together the songs that remind you of that person, send them in a playlist.
It's about a thought.
It's the thought. You're
It's
absolutely
the
right.
thought.
It's the thought
Absolutely.
shows somebody that you care with a little gift thrown in.
Nice bit of biscuit for your cup of tea. If you ring the tea, apparently they'll bring you a cup of tea. Yeah, they're just on the way now.
Oh, my goodness, that's going to drive me crazy. Take that. He's going to abuse that, I can tell you that right now. Kate, thank you so much for your time.
You for
Great
that.
ideas, lovely ideas there.
Lovely, thank you. The time, just after 8:30, well, it's 32 minutes now past 8 o'clock. NHS waiting lists reach unprecedented numbers. The government has been introducing community diagnostic centres. They say these are one-stop shops for life-saving tests. They've just announced that 19 more centres will open this year as part of what the Health Secretary is calling a recovery plan. But will it have any impact? Let's go to the Minister for Roads and Buses, Richard Holmes. I don't know what's got to do with you, Richard. I don't know what the roads and buses bit's got to do with you and the community diagnostic centres. Maybe it's catching the bus to get there. But, Richard, this sounds a good idea if these are properly funded and it takes pressure off existing NHS outlets, I would have thought. But the main thing is, if you have a concern, I'm reading this as this is a way to detect an illness early and accessibly.
No, you're absolutely right, Eamonn. What we're trying to do is, there's obviously people who didn't get a chance to go to the GPs during the pandemic, a bit of a backlog there in terms of people waiting for those diagnostics. And what we want to do is try and get as many of those people through as quickly as possible. We've got over £1 billion of funding set aside for this broader programme around catch-up. This is a crucial part of that, and we're going to have around 160 centres in the end for this. We've got 92 already set up, another 19 coming on stream this year. But you're absolutely right, this is about trying to catch those things early for people, because actually for them, sometimes it'll be the good news that actually there's nothing to worry about. Sometimes it'll be catching things earlier for people, and that also has a really beneficial in terms of reducing costs for the NHS, but also those better chances of recovery as well for people.
The one-stop shops are located in a range of convenient settings for people, like shopping centres and football stadiums. I mean, how is that going to be monitored, in terms of safeguarding the public? How are they going to find out about it? Do we know?
Yeah, people will be made aware of these when they're in their areas. What we want to do is have them in the most convenient places possible for people so that they're easy to access, open more than your average GP surgery so that there's more time there, more slots can be filled, and with specialists in those different fields of diagnostics as well. So it's about making them as accessible as possible. All of the normal NHS procedures will be there to protect people and their data, etc. But it's about trying to get as many people through as possible, because we've got hopefully these centres we're thinking of around 1.1 million extra people will be able to be diagnosed much sooner through this programme, which will help to try and get some of those concerns that people have dealt with much more quickly than if they were just going through the normal process.
Yeah,
so
it's about
part
taking
of the
away
package that we're bringing forwards.
Yeah, it's about taking away not only the weight, because with the weight comes worry, and accessibility's all what it's about. Richard, as you may expect, there's a number of political stories doing the rounds today, and we're just looking for your comments on them. Labour going big time on a catalogue of waste on government credit cards. Now, we've been taking the view throughout the programme today, it's easy to judge these things when you don't exactly know why the expense was made. But there seems to be a big increase, certainly during the pandemic and beyond, on expense spending within government departments.
No, so I think there was an uptick during the pandemic with people working from home, but we're going to see this in the broader context. So it's around £150 million last year, but actually back in 2009, 2010, when Labour were last in, this was almost £1,000 million. So it's 85% lower. What we've tried to do is introduce some real transparency into this sector. So in 2012, we publish on a monthly basis now all expenditure over £500 on the government procurement cards. That's all available for your viewers on the government's website on gov.uk. So that's what we're trying to do, greater transparency. That's why we've seen that massive fall since the last time Labour were in office on this, but we've always got to keep an eye on it. There'll be some things, international conferences, which are always going to be expensive. In fact, it's probably more expensive sometimes not to stay at these conference hotels when you consider security and travel to some of these venues. I myself was up in Bury last week in Lancashire. I drove myself up and some of the staff from my team and also stayed at the very nicely appointed Premier Inn. So there's, I think most of the time, all of this stuff can be done at relatively low cost, but there are some circumstances when that's just not possible.
Now, Richard, one of the things that we've been talking about throughout the programme is this Tory rebellion that Sunak could be facing over sewage in the UK rivers. He's facing defeat in the House of Lords over his bid to scrap clean water regulations as part of the post-Brexit red tape situation. What's your take on that?
Well, look, so one of the things that we didn't know until around 2016 was just how much of a problem this was, because until that point, only 5% of our rivers were regularly monitored. We've got that up to 90% now. It'll be 100% by the end of the year, because until you're monitoring the problem, you just don't know how bad it is. On top of that, we've really started to escalate some of these fines for the water companies, over 50 of those in the last couple of years alone, tens of millions of pounds of the fines going out there. What I want to see, though, rather than fines, is I want to see the water companies sorting out this problem. And that's what we've got to do. We do have an antiquated system. I don't know what your house is like, but the wastewater from the roof goes with the wastewater from the loo in the sink in my house. Some of those systems aren't fit for purpose. We have to make them better and make them cleaner, and we have to deal with this issue. But we start by monitoring the situation, finding out exactly where we are, and then dealing with it. That's what the 2021 Environment Act does. It really puts us on a long-term path to reducing wastewater going into our rivers. We've got to do more in that area, but I think we've made some really good progress over the last few years with a number of clean bathing areas at record highs in the UK. All steps in the right direction, but definitely still more to do.
So just finally and briefly, it's a sort of big carrot or a bribe to the utility companies. It's really saying, look, we can do this one of two ways. You can actually spend your own money on improving the situation, or we'll just fine you. So we'd rather not fine you and make it look as though you're spending your own money doing what you should have done in the first place.
Well, that's what we want them to do. We have had to issue over £100 million of the fines in the last couple of years. What I want to see is actually the companies investing for the long term to get those sewerage systems in the right place. We've seen that big super sewer going through the centre of London in the last few years. Massive investment there. But these are all big steps. These are big long-term projects. I want to see more of that because I want to see us having the cleanest rivers possible. We saw, following that industrial era, actually salmon and trout returning to places like in my constituency in the River Wear. I want to see those rivers as clean as possible and full of life as well, because it's great for biodiversity. It's actually great for the rural economy as well in terms of things like tourism. So we've got to get there, but it's got to be a carrot and stick approach, and the companies which don't do it, we need to see them face punishment.
Richard Holden, thanks for explaining that. Appreciate it. Thanks for your time today, and look out for one of his community diagnosis centres coming to a neighbourhood near you. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Holden.
I was just going to say,
what?
it just gets under my skin that these water companies are getting away with it. You know, if that was me, I'd put them in prison. I'd literally say, you dumped 375,000 times sewage in local rivers. You've got this much time to sort it out. Otherwise, you're going to prison with your £3.2 million salary.
They're obviously pleading poverty. They're coming back and saying, no, well, we can't spend money on improvements if you keep fining us.
Well, you can't if you've got salaries like that and you're not doing the job that you have got to be held accountable for. It's not on. You keep saying, you know, we're going to do it. You've got to do it now. It's not right. Throw them in prison.
I think there was some sort of deal with the devil done when these companies were all privatised. It was like saying, please take one, please buy one, please, we'll be good to you. If you buy it, you know, we'll not be too hard on you. And I think that's
but also, Eamonn, it's interlinked. If our water's not clean, and you know, then we have problems. Then we go to the NHS. The NHS, it's a vicious circle. You've got to clean it up. Water is it's a human right to have clean water.
Human right, absolutely.
And you know, to be able to swim and enjoy, and for our wildlife as well. I mean, it does get this sort of thing does get my skin really.
I find it amazing that you could be fined money for peeing in the street, but yet you can fill a river full of pee and poo.
But when you look at the figures, this is constant, daily dumping into our rivers.
Tens of thousands. There's a great piece in the Times today on pages 8 and 9, pages 8 and 9, explaining all of this, the amount of sewage that is pumped in, and the salaries that go to
That's what I'm saying.
water bosses. Yeah,
they're not doing it.
Work it out for yourselves. Back with the papers, Don Leeson and Christopher Biggins right after this.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you know, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back.
Eamonn Holmes, back on the TV with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh, yes.
Oh,
already to bless.
Yeah. Oh, Eamonn. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamonn Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion, and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 8:45. Joining us this morning to go through the papers is former editor of the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson, and actor Christopher Biggins. How are you this morning?
Very well, thank you.
So what caught your fancy this morning?
Well, this is the Sussexes are expected at the coronation, but will anyone talk to them?
I know.
I.e. the other members of the royal family. Interesting, which I found very interesting this morning. If the Sussex do go to the ceremony, Prince Edward and wife Sophie would technically be required to bow and curtsy to them. However, if Charles makes them the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh, then that would not happen. So it'd be interesting to see if Charles does that.
But do you think they're going to turn up? I mean, after everything they've done and said and put that family through, do you think they have the audacity to turn up? I'd be mortified. I wouldn't be able to show my face.
No, I think they will turn up.
Do you?
I do.
I think they're unembarrassable. Yeah.
Yeah,
really?
Exactly. You're absolutely right, Eamonn.
TV series and at least 3 more books to be
Wow.
got out.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Netflix will be there filming every moment of it. But it does take a lot of chutzpah to do what they're doing.
Yeah, it really does.
But I think they'll do it for Charles, funny enough. Because I think for whatever's been going on, I think he does still love his father. But I mean, you know, what can
Do you think it'll overshadow the coronation, though?
No, because I think not. Because I think the people in charge will put them in very negative places.
Right, at the back of the hall.
At the back of the hall, exactly.
So she can scream discrimination on that if they do that.
Of course, and she will.
That's the danger, isn't it?
But anyways, let's make it a nice occasion because I think we need something good, and the coronation is going to be rather wonderful. I think.
Also, you know, the idea that this could be a reconciliation. There are actually more important things than your reconciliation.
You're right.
And I think that you can't take away, your dad's just been made king, but let's forget that. We'll all do huggy-kissy and listening to you, blurting your eyes out and everything. It's not the time nor the place. If he wants to do reconciliation, do it before or after.
I have to say, though, I mean, with everything going on, the royal family have dealt with this with perfection. No comments, it's just been a good standard line. Kate and William coming out after all the allegations, carrying on with their duty. I mean, it's impeccable, really.
Well, they've taken a leaf from the Queen's book.
Yeah.
You know, and the Queen was absolutely the best royal ever.
Yeah. But, they're rising above it, aren't they? I mean,
Yeah,
that's
they are.
what they need to do.
Yeah.
And I think that's why Charles should invite them. They should turn up. And it should be, they are the bigger people. Charles and William are the bigger people. Don't sink to their level.
I think also they're sort of an example for all of us as a family, aren't they? It's like, if these sort of things happen, rise above it, try and be inclusive, try to bring them back to the fold.
No, get even. I don't agree with any of you.
I think family's so important.
Well, the family is so important, but I wouldn't be sitting swallowing everything, saying, yeah, OK, say this about me, say that about me, that's fine, I'll take all that in the chin, whatever, as long as it makes you happy. No, I don't agree. I think before all of this, there should be phone calls, there should be a summit, there should be a meeting. I mean, how could Camilla, how could Catherine look them? How could William, after what's been said, look these two straight in the eye and say, oh, that was OK, you threw all that mud at us, some of it stuck, but anyway, nice to see you, how you doing?
I don't think that will happen, though. What? I don't think that will happen. I don't think they will. I think they will keep their distance.
Do you?
Yeah, I really do.
I personally think that to show their show their faults up even more, they will go out of their way to be more generous.
Yeah, but what he said about that family is terrible.
I know, but that's my point. Like, the more you go forward and say it doesn't matter, come, you know, they look great then, don't they?
Yeah, but I think what they'll do is they'll smile. I don't think there'll be any, you know, well, how are you? You know, how's the kids?
Well, I tell you what, that coronation isn't about the king. It's going to be all about these little eye contact, movements, distance, space, all that kind of thing. It'll be interesting to see.
The other alternative, they have been paid a shed-load, or offered a shed-load of money to stay in America and commentate for the American networks. So, and they do like a pound note.
Oh, yeah, they do.
Well, OK.
We
go to the front page of the Express and care crisis. The care crisis deepens, endangering the elderly. In what way?
Oh, this is it's an awful report. It's an Age UK report, and they have done a huge survey, and they're discovering that 3 million people, elderly people, are now relying on carers who are, as we know, are in desperately short supply. There's not enough to go around. 7.5 billion has been pledged by the government in additional funding to help the industry out, but basically, you know, there are 3 million people in this country who are struggling with the very, and it's up from 1.7 in the last couple of years, who are struggling with the very basics, Eamonn. They can't sort of like dress themselves, feed themselves because they are in pain, they are suffering various illnesses, and there is no one to look after them. And you can't imagine the incredible loneliness of some of these people. If they don't have families, as you say, Sarah, families are so important. But if you don't have a family, 3 million people in that situation where they're struggling with the very basics and they can't get the help they need. So Age Concern have done this incredible report, very thorough, and they're presenting it to the government, saying you need to do something now to help these people. As we know, we have an ageing population. The caring industry is having trouble recruiting. It's notoriously underpaid as well, incredibly hard work. So again, it's an element. It's not sexy to talk about older people, is it? Because there's other, like with Harry and Bloody and Meghan. But it's like it's like we need to help these people out. We're all going to get there at one point because the alternative is even worse.
Well, the social care system in this country is absolutely broken.
Absolutely.
And it's like anything, it needs money. But
Yeah.
I have to say, coming from the culture that I do, you know, the elderly are revered. And, you know, my mum...
So they should be.
My mum lives with my youngest brother. I mean, of course, that has its own problems, but she's not on her own. She's got family, in and out, young grandchildren.
We should learn from that.
And unfortunately, there's lots of people on their own, like you say, and that is... It's a really, really sad indictment of our society,
It is, no, absolutely. And it's going to get worse because we are an ageing population.
OK. Let's talk about Valentine's Day and how Deliveroo can play a part. This is in the Times, Christopher.
Yes, I mean, this is very interesting. Deliveroo, top of their agenda tomorrow is delivering oysters. And you can ring up 30 minutes before and have have oysters delivered to your home in order to, you know, satisfy both you and your partner.
That scares me. Food poisoning. I'm just thinking food poisoning here.
Well, I've had it twice.
Yeah, what, with oysters?
From oysters,
yeah, that's scary.
I'm so with you too. I'd be very careful about where I'd want to see where I'm getting my oysters from.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. One of the worst meals I ever had involved oysters, bananas, and George Best.
Oh, what's the story?
I was on honeymoon with George Best, as you do, obviously, and we were out, and George thought it was hilarious to get me and his brand new wife to eat oysters and bananas, and he found it most amusing. He kept saying, you can tell a lot about a lady the way she eats an oyster, and I'm going, oh my Lord. And then they produced this banana for dessert.
Were you OK the next day?
I was, apart from wanting to kill George Best, I was absolutely fine. Yes, no, I didn't get food poisoning.
So, Amy, are you taking Ruth somewhere nice tomorrow?
She doesn't do it. She doesn't do Valentine's Day.
What do you mean she doesn't do it?
She doesn't believe in it. She doesn't do it.
Oh.
She certainly wouldn't go out on Valentine's Day. No.
Oh. So you'll be at home on your own?
I'll be at home with her, I presume.
Oh.
You only presume, though. Ruth's off out somewhere else.
She's out to somebody else.
Why don't you, after the show, go and get her a card, some chocolates, you know, buy her something.
Why don't you mind your own business?
Why don't you just do that? And you might be in for a really nice special evening.
Well,
instead of, like, you know, being down and miserable about it. Go out and make it happen.
Make it happen.
Make it happen.
My...
Surprise her. You never know.
You never know.
You never know what could happen. Fireworks.
Not in his state.
He could get a massage, couldn't he? Desperate for a massage.
Well, evidently, according to a story in the Daily Mail today, there are 12 relationship types.
Oh, yes.
It's a very complicated
Very
story. I've
good.
read it 5 times. I still have no idea what they're actually on about. But evidently, some very, very boffin type people have done a study. And the more you name your relationship, the more healthy it's going to be. So they've come up with 12 relationship types, and one of them is the cactus and the fern, where one...
So you're supposed to name your relationship?
Yes, absolutely. They gave all these people a list of questions to answer, and it identifies various personality traits about what goes with what.
Cactus fern.
Yeah.
That's me. I need the attention.
One partner needs more regular closeness and connection, while the other needs less. That's you are cactus.
I'm also
and fern.
thinking that might be a cactus. She's slightly prickly, Eamonn, possibly.
So how can you get close to a cactus if it's prickly?
Very carefully. But I mean, that was the one that caught my eye. But the rest
I think I could be a criticise, defend.
Where's that one?
That one
Because
here.
One person gives feedback in the form of criticism, while their partner often responds by defending themselves. And let me guess
I
which
think that's
one you
me.
are.
I'm a bit of a nagger.
Well, you know what, Sarah, I was looking for the one that said nagging old boot, which would be the one for me, and I couldn't find it on there. Mountains and molehills, I think, is close. One sees issues as overwhelming, that would be the men, while the women just get on with it. Does that sound very anti-men, does it?
There you go. Biggins, what do you think you are? Cactus?
I think probably a cactus, yes.
No? Bit prickly, don't like to be touched?
Yeah. Well, I like to be touched, actually. I don't necessarily like to be kissed on the mouth by a stranger.
No.
Let's not go down there again.
The running theme. Do you use tongues or not?
Oh.
Guys, at that stage, we have got to break off and hit the break. And thank you very much indeed for all your contributions this morning. We'll see you after this.
And happy Valentine's Day.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farrow.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Turkey issues arrest warrants for building developers as the earthquake death toll climbs to 34,000.
Good morning. It's 9 o'clock on Monday, the 13th of February. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Sarah Khan.
We're with you until 9:30. Leading the news this morning, Turkish police have issued 113 arrest warrants relating to buildings that collapsed during the devastating earthquake a week ago today. It comes as a Foreign Office minister warns the death toll could reach 50,000.
The Prime Minister's bill to cut EU red tape is in jeopardy as he faces rebellion over his plan to scrap clean water regulations. The government's retained EU law bill would ditch protections for swimmers and wildlife.
The Labour Party is claiming that the BBC chair, Richard Sharp's position is increasingly untenable. It comes after a committee of MPs found that he had made significant errors of judgment in relation to an £800,000 loan to the then Prime Minister Boris Johnson.
We'd love you to get in touch via the usual way, either Twitter or email, and let us know where you're watching or listening to us from.
The Labour Party has condemned what it describes as luxury spending on government credit cards. It leads the Guardian today, and the headline says Labour condemns catalogue of waste on government credit cards. The spending, an analysis of it, shows that this sort of spending has gone up 70% over the last 13 years. Now, in the past hour, Richard Holden, government spokesman, told us that the government was being transparent about spending.
You're going to see this in the broader context. So it's around £150 million last year. But actually, back in 2009, 2010, when Labour were last in, this was almost £1,000 million. So it's 85% lower. What we've tried to do is introduce some real transparency into this sector. So in 2012, we publish on a monthly basis now all expenditure over £500 on the government procurement cards. That's all available for your viewers on the government's website on gov.uk. So that's what we're trying to do, greater transparency. That's why we've seen that massive fall since the last time Labour were in office on this, but we've always got to keep an eye on it.
Well, joining us now in the studio is Shadow Minister for Levelling Up, down the line, Minister for Levelling Up, Alex Norris. Alex, what would you do that's different then?
Sarah, thanks for having me. What we've revealed today is a culture of a government that's very, very casual with the public's money. As we talk, businesses up and down the country are opening up. And we know that those businesses will be very hard on the money that they spend as the cost of their operations, because they have to be. We would take that same approach, that same level of rigour, because you look at some of the things we've revealed. Did the government really need to spend that money on theatre training? Did they really need those pictures from the Tate Gallery? We would take the same level of rigour that business up and down the country is doing and apply that to our nation's finances.
So you'd be very Thatcher-esque then, it'd be all about good housekeeping.
But I don't think that's necessarily a Thatcher-esque thing or any other politician's thing. I think the public should be able to expect that we would treat taxpayers' money as if it was precious on our own and be really, really hard on it, and that's what we'd be. This is what we're seeing, this staggering increase. On these cards you can spend £20,000 in one go, £100,000 in a month. This is what happens to governments that have been doing it for too long, that have got sloppy, and this is what we see. And frankly, Richard's defence, well, it's preposterous.
Well, what do you think is defence? He's actually saying spending's gone down proportionately.
Well, I mean, it's handy that he was outside because his pants were on fire there. The £1 billion he talks about there was across the entirety of the public sector. So we're talking about the NHS, we're talking about local councils, we're talking about the BBC. This is departmental spending that the ministers are directly accountable for. So, I'd like to hope that he's just mistaken there, because otherwise I think it is muddying the debate, frankly.
But let me just get this right, OK? You singled out here Greg Hands, who stayed 2 nights in a £318 5-star hotel in Germany. Are you telling me that if that was Labour, you would put your minister up in a bed and breakfast that costs 50 quid a night? Is that what you're saying? That you will take that cost right down?
So I don't think those are the two options. It is reasonable to expect that ministers...
Well, what is reasonable? Because £318, to me, I just think, I'm happy for the minister to go and stay there in Germany for that much. What is reasonable? Because you need to start telling us what you would do different.
Yeah, absolutely. But what I would want to see and what I would want to be able to come on your show and talk to your viewers about is that we genuinely got the best deal, because there will be times that might be the only hotel in the place where he's having to do important business the next morning at 7 a.m. I'm not going to poke holes in that, but we'd want to know that for sure, that was the best and only option at that time. And what you will get from us, Sarah, is that accountability, that the money that was spent was essential spending in the interest of the British people.
So how are we going to get that accountability? So every time a minister or Labour spends on that credit card, are your credit card receipts going to be published for the public to check out? To be quite honest with you, I haven't got time as a working mum running my own business to then check your credit card bills to say, oh yeah, that's okay. I haven't got time to do that. I should just trust you. And I do feel that a lot of MPs and ministers are trustworthy and that they're not spending public money just down the drain. I don't believe that they are.
No, I don't either. We don't want to sully the body politic in doing that. And nor, Sarah, are we asking you to completely change your life to do that. That's why we've done it as an opposition. It's our job to hold the government to account, not yours. So because you haven't got the time, for very good reasons. So, that's why we've done that. And I hope that would show to people, that we have a real commitment in this space, that actually we think this is really important. This is the public's money. And, we know people are struggling with the cost of living. We know up and down the country, whether it's teachers, nurses, firefighters are being told they can't have a pay rise. They will look at some of the spending, particularly on entertainment, particularly, as I say, theatre training, paintings, and wonder, was that really what the British people needed in their interests? And I think that's right that we probe that as an opposition. And in government, we would be very, very transparent. And if we weren't meeting those standards, we know that people would pull us up on it.
Yeah. Thanks, Alex. Thank you. Well, wherever it is you're staying, it looks very nice. I'd pay £318 for that. That looks very good. It's lovely, complete with fluffy cushions. Looks really, really good, really good. Alex, thanks for giving us your argument on all of that. Appreciate that. But I'll say this about hotels. Match day, say in Manchester, right? So whether City's playing, United's playing, whatever else is going on, there might be a concert in Manchester. You will be very hard-pressed to find a hotel cheaper than 300 quid.
Absolutely.
On certain days, Fridays and Saturdays and Sundays. And sometimes it's absolutely... I've seen me 400 quid being asked for a relatively ordinary room. Now, it's not going to be like that on a Tuesday night or maybe a Monday night or whatever. But yes, sometimes hotel rooms... they're really bang out of order.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, things are really expensive. And I'm not, obviously, I'm paying taxes. I want to make sure my money is spent on the right things. But like I said before, we need to put it into context because just saying £318 for a minute,
We'll say that was a match night in Germany or whatever it was.
We need to put it into context and not get... But I'd like to know what the opposition, how they're going to make it transparent. It's OK picking holes.
But is it worthwhile picking holes? The amount of money you spend picking holes and all. I mean, I totally get what you say because out of context, everything will seem expensive. But Alex makes a good point about artwork and, for instance, spending. I do think places should look well, But surely we can get a loan of artwork from our museums and things, you know, showcasing the country.
Absolutely.
Showcasing young artists.
Yeah, and you just need to be creative, a bit more entrepreneurial. Unfortunately, some of these career politicians, they've not been entrepreneurial, so they can't think outside the box. But also, when Boris spent all that money in doing his, you know, that still sticks in people's minds.
Yeah.
And that's where we go, oh, yeah, we have got to make sure that things are spent, you know, our money's been spent wisely.
Yeah. Well, there we go. Your views very, very welcome. We're unfortunately 1 week on now since the Turkey-Syria earthquake, and while the death toll has just topped 34,000, a Foreign Office minister believes that the total loss of life could hit as high as 50,000 people.
This makes it the deadliest earthquake since 1939, and while rescue aid continues, the chances of finding survivors is becoming more and more remote. Paul Hawkins has this report.
A 5-year-old girl pulled out after almost a week under the rubble. Similarly, after 4.5 days and an anxious, painstaking wait by rescuers, this man was pulled out alive. Children, babies, even pets. But these moments are now even rarer. In Hatay province, Mehmet is desperate. My children are under the rubble, he says. I've been waiting for rescue teams for 5 days. Nobody comes here to help. I got out by myself. I saved my own life. We came to help you, shouts this rescuer. We came to listen, to hear your voice. Give us a sign. A disaster on this scale has called for an international response. Tens of thousands of professional and volunteer rescuers have joined the search. But it's not without its risks. This man survived and was later recovered from the rubble. It's a similar story in northern Syria. The city of Aleppo, for example, more used to the dangers and destruction of missiles than Mother Nature. The response here complicated by the ongoing civil war. Northern Syria, a patchwork quilt of territory controlled by different rebel groups and the government. President al-Assad here visiting 9-year-old Fatmeh, the only surviving member of her family. Satellite pictures of southeastern Turkey before and after the earthquake show the scale of the destruction. But the loss of life is set to climb much further, with the UN warning it's likely to reach 50,000 deaths. That would make it the world's 7th deadliest earthquake since 1950.
The epicenter of the earthquake was the worst event in 100 years in this region. As you have seen here, there has never been an international response, a Turkish response to a natural disaster as we see here in these terrible days.
Many Turks will not share that view. As the death toll rises, so does their anger at their President Erdogan.
Son tespitlerimize göre
After 20 years in power, many are questioning why earthquake building regulations weren't followed. And what happened to the billions raised from earthquake taxes? The president, who faces re-election in the summer, has hit back, saying it's not possible to be prepared for such a disaster. But the loss of life on this scale means inevitably questions will be asked. Paul Hawkins, GB News.
Terrible, terrible situation. Coming up to 14 minutes past 9 o'clock. This is GB Breakfast on television, online and on radio. We'll take a break there after that.
Well, we're going to be talking to the football team clubbing together to buy their local pub.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today.
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Now we've a very good story to tell you. This is a football team in the village of Quimeth, and this is in Pembrokeshire. And what they're doing is they've decided to buy their local pub because it closed down, and they say, look, you know, this is the centre of Quimeth, and we could revive this.
Yeah, and basically they're saying that, you know, it closed post-pandemic and they want to save their local clubhouse.
OK, well, let's talk to a couple of the men behind all of this. Local councillor Chris Thomas about all this, and the club secretary Robin Davis, who can tell us about all of this. Guys, good to talk to you. Good to talk to you. Chris, how likely is this pitch, how likely is it to succeed?
Well, good morning. We started a campaign before Christmas, and I'm glad to say we're up to £120,000 has been pledged. We're now creating the company as a cooperative, so it's like a cooperative share offer, £100 a share, and as I said, 120,000 in already. but our target is 350,000. So we're a third of the way. And the pub there is called Crymych Arms, and it closed about 18 months ago. And we want to reopen it as a traditional community pub, but then have our football club there as the HQ for the football club. The club only formed in 2019, so it's a young football club, and we want then to have the pub as the HQ.
Robin, you're the secretary of the pub. Can you tell me why the pub, ran into difficulties? I can understand, obviously, post-pandemic, but what are the reasons that it's kind of been neglected and got into this state?
Well, I'm the secretary of the...
of the football club. Yeah, sorry. So perhaps I should ask that question to the councillor.
No, I can answer that. No, the pub didn't run into difficulties. It's just the owners were looking to retire, looking to sell. Obviously, the pandemic came, difficult period for everybody. So it shut in September 2021. It's not all that long ago, but no, the pub has been thriving for a long, long time. It's been around there for about 170 years. It opened before I was born, and it's just that we need to get it reopened for the sake of the village, for the sake of the community, and it'll make everybody happy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell us, Chris. Now, I don't know if you're there in an official capacity as a councillor, or you would be a customer, a frequenter of the actual pub itself. But why is it so important to what goes on in your community?
Yeah, well, I'm the chair of the community council, and yes, our family frequented the building as a restaurant and to socialise, singing in Welsh, very important in West Wales. And the pub is a focal point, and people have missed it. And it closed because the current owners were retiring, and nobody's come forward to buy it. So we've said, look, let's do a community share offer, and it's been done elsewhere across the country. And we're also giving a dividend. We're planning in the business plan to give 3% dividend to people who invest, and also then there could be a tax incentive. UK government have these investment tax incentives. So anybody who puts money in, if they're a taxpayer, they get 30% of the investment back. So it's all very positive at the moment.
And let's say you've raised the money and the football club have moved in, how much money do you need to keep it going? And how, are you expecting, obviously, that once it's up and running, it'll just pay for itself?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to set up a business plan. We know historically what sort of client base it's got. Been busy on the food side, been busy on the wet sales. So by using it as a community pub, but also utilising it as our home for the football club. There's a local team, Boncath, who have got junior section, so there's a lot of kids and parents there who can use it. So the turnover should be quite reasonable, and it'll give us a profit at the end of the year. That's the plan.
Well, we hope so. But Robin, what about the team? What's the actual name of your team?
It's Crymych Football Club.
OK, and Crymych Football Club, how likely are they to give you a profit at the end of the year? How are they doing on the points side?
Yeah, they've done well. I'd say they set up in 2019, so it's a very new club. But they've done well in the last 2 years. They won a local cup. They've won promotion to the first division. They're in the top 2 or 3 in the league. We run a second team. So there's about 50, 60 players involved. A lot of them are in their early 20s. At that age, Eamonn, we're all a bit thirsty. We all like to eat food. And so, yeah, it should be self-sufficient, to be honest. And it's something that the community want to see open.
Good. And on match day, you might get 2 extra visitors in the form of me and Sarah. We'll down, watch a game, quench our thirst afterwards, and hopefully you serve a bit of food as well, or a few snacks. We like all that. But lovely to talk to you guys, and really hope Really hope it goes well for you, really do. You deserve it. So thank you very much indeed, Chris and Robin.
Thank you very much.
From the Quimith Arms. And I see there's so much around. I was up in the Cotswolds the other day. So many closed pubs.
I know, but what great, best practice that is.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Well, OK, we'll call time. See you in the morning.
Bye-bye.
Good morning, my name's Rachel Ayres and welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office. It'll be quite a cloudy start to the new week, but we can expect some sunny spells later. And this settled weather has been due to high pressure that's been across the UK for quite some time now. It's going to be sticking around into this week, but we might just start to see some weather fronts pushing in from the west later on. Back to this morning, and it's quite a cloudy start out there with maybe some mist and fog patches around too. Though as they lift and break and the cloud elsewhere will lift too, we'll see some sunny spells developing throughout the morning and into the early part of the afternoon today. Temperatures will be doing well once again for the time of year with highs of around 10 to 12 across southern areas. Through the rest of this afternoon and into this evening with clear spells around, it'll be a touch cooler in some places tonight with a risk of mist and fog, particularly across East Anglia and South East England tonight. Though looking further west, and some cloud is starting to spill its way in as we head into Tuesday morning, bringing some outbreaks of light rain and drizzle too. But this will keep temperatures up in the west, though a cooler night to come in the east with a chance of some patchy rural frost. Now as we look through to the start of tomorrow, and we'll start to see that cloud spilling its way north and eastwards through the morning, bringing some outbreaks of rain and drizzle, particularly across Scotland, Northern England and Northern Ireland. Elsewhere, it'll be a dry and bright day with plenty of sunshine, and temperatures will be doing once again very well for the time of year, with highs of even 13 across England and Wales tomorrow. And the weather isn't set to change too much as we head throughout the rest of the week, but by around midweek we might just see some outbreaks of rain, and temperatures will be remaining at or just above average for the time of year.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "No, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions. I have no time for cultural totalitarianism. We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. B, I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back.
Eamonn Holmes back on the TV with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh yes, already to bless.
Yeah. Oh, Eamonn.
Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamonn Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion, and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Parliament might be in recess, but the politics doesn't stop. Today, we're exploring the issue of grooming gangs and how they still blight our country. That and government procurement cards. Is there a spending crisis? And a secret Brexit summit. What is actually happening between these cross-party talks? We'll explore it all after the headlines.
Good morning, it's 9:30. I'm Ray Addison with your news update. Taxpayers' money is said to have been wasted, with Labour accusing the government of a lavish spending culture. The party analysed